A gruesome two-fang bite mark is revealed on a pale neck. A grief-stricken voice calls out Chris's name, and a young boy lies lifeless, bearing a bite mark. Villagers gather by Chris's coffin, concluding a vampire drained his blood. In a heavy rain, the fearful villagers whisper, questioning if she is the one to blame. A voiceover identifies the girl hiding behind a tree as Suha. Suha watches the grieving crowd from afar as they attribute the recent tragedy to her arrival. Rain falls on the bite mark, and a villager suggests the rumors about the girl might be true. In a flashback, Chris confronts Suha under a tree, telling her that people call her a vampire. Suha looks up, completely stunned by the accusation. Chris watches her with a gentle and curious smile. He leans in closer, innocently asking if the rumors are true. With a whoosh, Suha whips her head away. Her expression stiffens, but Chris, unfazed, keeps his cheerful smile. He extends a hand to her. He introduces himself as Chris, surprising the reclusive Suha. Chris mentions that he has never seen her during the day before and asks for her name. Suha turns away with a defiant humph. Chris teases that her name must be humph, causing a flustered Suha to protest loudly. Chris reveals he knows her name is Suha. He grins, admitting he has known her name all along. He tells the shocked Suha that she's famous in the village. Suha vehemently denies the accusation, shouting that she's not a vampire. Chris calmly continues, saying everyone has a story about her. He lists the rumors. She moves often, avoids the daytime, and wanders alone at night. Then, with wide eyes, he reveals the wildest rumor, that she eats pigeons. Suha screams in frustration, especially infuriated by the last claim. Dejected, she slumps to the ground, despairing over the strange rumors about her. Chris suggests she can prove them false just by coming out during the day. Suha sadly explains that no one believes her, no matter how many times she denies it. She questions herself, wondering if there is some truth to people's fears. A memory surfaces of her parents warning her to hide her abilities to avoid being misunderstood. They warned her what would happen if someone were to accidentally see her use her powers. Their warning that she would be called a vampire echoes in her mind, making her question her own identity. Back in the present, Chris speaks softly. He doesn't think she's a vampire. He looks down at Suha with a bright and reassuring expression. He explains his reasoning, revealing that he was born with a limp. Suha looks up, confused by his seemingly unrelated confession. Chris explains that people gossip about those who are different, which can make you afraid of them. Suha listens intently, her expression softening in surprise. He recalls hearing people say his parents must regret having him. He admits he used to be afraid those cruel words might be true. But Chris's tone turns confident as he declares he's no longer afraid because he knows his parents love him. He breaks into a bright, happy smile. He lets out a cheerful hee-hee. Chris extends his hand again, asking Suha to be his friend. Suha looks up at his outstretched hand, her eyes filled with surprise and emotion. Suha takes his hand, agreeing to be his friend. In a happy memory, Suha recalls it was the first time she had ever laughed with someone. It was also the first time she had a friend to play with. She remembers the fun-filled days they spent together, watching sunsets, and the first time she wanted to share her secret with someone. Wow. Chris is filled with amazement after she demonstrates her power. Suha blushes nervously and asks if her ability is weird. Chris passionately disagrees, exclaiming her power is both special and cool. He excitedly gives a double thumbs up, his face beaming with joy. Suha timidly asks if he isn't scared that she might be a vampire. He laughs it off, saying of course not, because he knows the real her. She presses him if he's sure, and he makes an okay sign to affirm his belief. Despite his reassurances, Suha admits she's still afraid she might actually be a vampire. Chris listens quietly, his expression growing thoughtful. He calls her name, surprising Suha. Suha turns to him, looking startled and flustered. Suha vehemently refuses, afraid something will go wrong. A gentle voiceover reassures her that it's okay. Chris looks at her earnestly and tells Suha that he trusts her. He offers a gentle, firm smile. Suha is left speechless by his absolute trust in her. She hangs her head, still plagued by doubt and fear. Chris tells her she doesn't have to do it right away. He explains she can do it when she finally believes that he trusts her. Smiling brightly, he makes her promise to bite his neck on the day she finally starts to believe in herself. Suha's memory concludes with the heartfelt thought that meeting him was the best thing that ever happened in her life. The scene shifts to a fiery night, with Suha screaming in terror as she realizes Chris is trapped in the burning house. The crowd holds her back, warning that the ceiling has collapsed, but she cries that she must save him. She panics, remembering he can't run because of his limp. With a thud, she plants her feet, having made her decision. As she charges forward, her parents' warning to never use her powers flashes through her mind. Ignoring their pleas to hide her powers, she rushes toward the inferno. Their voices warn that people will misunderstand her. As she sprints, the final, chilling memory echoes. Everyone will think she's a vampire. Shouting his name, she breaks through her fear. She runs with determination, deciding she doesn't care what anyone thinks or says. With tears of resolve, she vows not to be controlled by their ignorant words. With a crash, she bursts into the crumbling, burning building. Gasping for air amidst the flames, she is determined to save him. She finds Chris pinned under heavy, smoldering debris and reaches for him. Using immense strength, Suha lifts the debris and rescues her friend. Battered but alive, Chris looks up, gratefully saying that she came for him. With tears in his eyes, he reaffirms his unwavering trust in her. He insists that regardless of the rumors, someone as kind-hearted as her could never be a vampire, leaving Suha to weep alone. The memory ends with the tragic sight of Chris lying in his coffin with a wooden stake through his chest. Years later, the scene shifts to a grand school as a voice mentions the arrival of a new student. With a click, a now grown-up Suha stares ahead, her gaze cold and guarded. A woman smiles, confirming Suha's name and welcoming her to Desolace Academy. A woman in a green dress smiles and explains that the academy operates out of respect for the founder spirit. She elaborates that Desolace is a night school, with classes starting promptly at 9 p.m. The woman reassures the silent Suha that though it might be confusing, she will get used to it soon. She then informs Suha that due to a lack of rooms in the new dormitory, she has been assigned to the old dormitory, warning that the unused room might be messy, which Suha silently accepts. The woman outlines a key rule. Students are strictly forbidden from leaving campus after sunset. Her tone grows serious as she urges Suha to stay indoors for her own safety, regardless of the official rules. She then reveals there was a recent murder nearby, with rumors blaming it on a vampire. She begins to reassure Suha, mentioning the school's famously strict admission system. As she is assuring Suha that she won't encounter any vampires on campus, a male student with golden eyes appears before them. Suha looks up at the tall, imposing student who is standing silently in the hall. Suha flinches, clearly startled by his sudden and silent appearance. The student apologizes for startling her and steps aside. He walks past, and Suha watches him head down the hall. Suha glances back, her expression weary yet curious. The student stops and looks back, his deep golden eyes meeting hers. Click-clack, the woman and Suha continue on their way. Leaving him behind, he remains in the sunlit hall, watching as they disappear into the shadows. The woman points to a set of large wooden doors, announcing that this is Suha's room. She apologizes for the room's remote location, promising to reassign her when another becomes available. Suha, however, insists it's fine and says she likes it here. After a thank you, the door slams shut, leaving Suha alone in the hallway. Suha is silent for a moment, her gaze still fixed on the door. She opens the door to find a room incredibly messy and cluttered. Suha freezes, silently questioning if this is really the room assigned to her. Hop, hop! Her cool demeanor instantly shatters as she jumps for joy, thrilled to finally have a room of her own. Beaming, she hopes the woman didn't see her outburst of excitement. She thinks to herself that this school is not only the best in Riverfield, but is also famous for its strict anti-vampire policies. Yay! She sheds tears of joy, celebrating that she'll never be mistaken for a vampire again. Her excitement fades as she remembers her past. She had to move constantly because her strange ability led people to believe she was a vampire. Shaking off the sad memories, she decides the messy room is no issue and begins cleaning with gusto. As she works, she sighs in frustration, thinking her stupid ability has never brought her anything good. She pauses, lost in melancholic thought. Chris's tearful, dying words echo in her mind. A kind-hearted person like you can't be a vampire. Back in the present, Suha silently admits her ability did do one good thing after all. She finally remembers Chris's bright, smiling face, the one life she managed to save. Her train of thought is broken as she thinks of the student she met earlier. easier. While cleaning the hallway, she effortlessly lifts a heavy wooden dresser. Thud! Mid-lift, she freezes in horror as the student from the hall walks into her room. Caught red-handed, she panics and makes a terrible excuse, claiming she was just looking for a book. Bang! She slams the furniture down and rushes toward him, desperately explaining that it's not what it looks like. Teary-eyed, oh no, she thinks in despair as tears stream down her face, her worst fear having come true. Overwhelmed by panic and despair, Suha can't help but burst into tears. The student watches her breakdown, a look of shock and concern on his face. I'm doomed, she cries, lamenting how hard she worked to get into the academy, only to be found out. He steps forward, gently places a hand on her head, and speaks calmly. You're not a vampire. He looks down at the crying Suha with a small, reassuring smile. She looks up, her tear-streaked face filled with shock and confusion. He explains that vampires can't get into the school due to its strict verification process. He grins, adding that he can tell she's not a monster just by how upset she is, causing Suha to cry in relief and thank him for believing her. Sobbing, Suha insists that while everyone feels the same, she really, desperately doesn't want to be mistaken for a vampire. She adds with her head down that there's no one else in the world. A painful memory surfaces of her younger self crying in the rain, her eyes glowing red. The memory shifts to a peaceful day with Chris under a tree. Back in the present, her eyes gleam with conviction as she finishes her thought. Who hates them more than I do? He watches her, clearly taken aback by her intense declaration. Standing in a room, Suha completes her passionate plea, declaring that no one hates vampires more than she does. Her eyes burn with conviction as she glares ahead, reaffirming her hatred. He remains silent, listening to her fierce words with a troubled expression. Her mood suddenly shifts as she cheerfully explains she's happy to have transferred to a school with no vampires. He stammers in agreement, somewhat flustered by her sudden change in attitude. An overjoyed Suha celebrates that she'll never be mistaken for a vampire again. He kindly offers her a handkerchief, noting that she must have had a hard time. As she cries in relief, she clenches her fist in anger, recalling the countless times she was wrongly accused. She furiously declares it's all because of those stupid vampires, while he listens with a strange smile. She explains that before she was born, vampires were just fictional creatures. She admits in confusion that she doesn't know why things changed. He listens intently, his expression turning serious and contemplative. Back in the present, she cheerfully asks about the book he came for. This startles him, and as he tries to protest, she casually picks up a book and asks if this is it. She examines the cover, commenting that the book looks ancient. He laughs nervously, claiming he has a thing for old books, which he seems to accept. Suha animatedly asks if the Academy's famous collection was the reason he enrolled. As she speaks, the grand and magnificent library of the Academy is shown. He looks away, a little flustered, and hesitantly agrees with her assumption. Suha happily reveals that reading is her hobby too. She confesses she read a lot because she had no friends, almost mentioning Chris's name. He comments that such old books are rarely read these days. He suddenly asks what the book is about, catching her off guard. He smiles as she stammers that it's just an old collection of stories. He expresses interest in reading it later, maintaining a gentle smile. Suha's eyes suddenly widen in realization. He looks confused as she begins to apologize, asking what she's sorry for. Suha blushes, apologizing for getting too excited and holding him up for so long. She shyly admits it's been a while since someone treated her like a normal person. He kindly reassures her not to worry, saying he enjoyed their conversation. He hands the book back to her, which she accepts with a deep blush. He thanks her and says goodbye, leaving a flustered Suha to barely manage a soft farewell. The moment the door closes, Suha panics, realizing she forgot to ask for his name. She reaches for the closed door, lamenting her missed chance to make a friend. Thump! To her surprise, the door begins to open again. Suha looks up, startled by the sudden noise. He stands in the doorway, smiling as he asks for her name. Suha is speechless, staring at him with wide eyes. Completely flustered, she excitedly blurts out that her name is Suha. He smiles warmly, telling her that Suha is a pretty name. She lets out a nervous giggle. Blushing furiously, she fidgets before him in the awkward silence. He breaks the tension with a friendly smile, asking if she wants to know his name. Whoosh! A flustered Suha quickly turns around, insisting she absolutely wants to know his name. He smiles warmly, finding it amusing that she's only asking now. but he agrees to tell her. He introduces himself as Heli, a 12th grade student at the academy. Heli smiles at Suha, asking if they can be friends. Suha blushes happily, stammering that she'd love to. Heli waves, saying he'll see her around, and bids her farewell. The door thuds shut, and Suha whispers a "see you" to the empty hallway. Now alone, she gives a small, victorious wave, ecstatic about the encounter. The scene shifts to a moonlit colonnade where students are walking after class. A voice calls his name, and Heli turns to see who it is. A red-haired student with fangs waves enthusiastically, exclaiming he's been looking for Heli. Footsteps echo as the red-haired student catches up, saying they were about to leave, and Heli apologizes for the delay. Heli explains he was held up talking to a new student. Thump, a blonde student appears, excitedly asking about the new transfer girl he's heard about. Heli confirms it's a girl and reveals she's staying in the old dorm they used to use, shocking his friends. The red-haired student expresses concern, noting the old storage room must be uncomfortable. The blonde student laments the loss of their old favorite hangout spot, since it was always dark. Hey, Heli suggests they might be able to visit if they become friends with her, praising the blonde student Shine's social skills. A blue-haired student, Solon, coldly interrupts, questioning the idea of befriending a human. Heli calmly explains he already introduced himself, asked to be friends, and revealed her name is Suha. A silver-haired student sides with Solon, warning Heli they shouldn't get involved with the other kids. Solon agrees, stating there's no need for them to interact with them at all. Heli reassures Solon that he understands his concerns, but insists Suha is somehow different. He muses that there's something about her that's similar to them, yet not quite the same. Cheyenne asks if she's one of them, but the red-haired student immediately questions how she could have gotten into the school if that were true. Solon firmly states there are no others like them. They're the only ones. Heli agrees Suha is not one of them, but insists she is special. A shot shows Suha with a serious, determined expression. The focus returns to Heli, his gaze deep and distant. Cheyenne covers his mouth and laughs, teasing Heli and asking if he's fallen for her. Solon sternly dismisses the notion, declaring they don't have such feelings. Nor should they. Solon asserts with a faint sneer that there's no point in befriending humans, because they are. The silver-haired student grimly finishes the thought, saying that getting mixed up with them will only cause her trouble. Heli remains silent, lost in his own thoughts. Solon looks at his friends and begins to give an order. He commands all of them to stay away from the new girl, with an image of Suha looming in the background. From a balcony above, Suha watches the group of boys. Standing in the courtyard below, Suha blushes deeply, having overheard their conversation. Heli looks up, his expression changing as if sensing her presence. Solon looks up as well, calling out Suha's name as she hangs her head in shame. Mortified, Suha thinks to herself that they already hate her. Her mind flashes back to a painful memory of other children ostracizing her, calling her a vampire and a jinx. She realizes with despair that the same thing is happening all over again. Overwhelmed with sadness, she remembers how desperately she wanted to make friends. This time, she remembers the looks of fear and disgust on the faces of the children from her past. Her memory overlaps with reality as she sees the boys below staring up at her. The red-haired student looks up, his expression filled with confusion. Cheyenne also stares, asking what's going on, bewildered. The silver-haired student looks up in confusion, wondering why they are all staring at her like that. Suha looks down at them. Her heart sinks. Suddenly, the blonde student appears before Suha, excitedly guessing her name and asking if she's the new transfer student. He introduces himself as Cheyenne with a bright smile. Cheyenne enthusiastically shakes Suha's hand, and she nervously returns his greeting. The red-haired student warns Suha to stay away from Cheyenne, calling him a troublemaker, and offers to be her friend instead. He flashes a charming, fanged smile and introduces himself as Gino. Suha shyly accepts Gino's offer of friendship, while an annoyed Cheyenne looks on. The silver-haired student pushes into the group, dusting off his shirt. He holds out his hand and introduces himself as Yen. Suha greets Yen with a bright, welcoming smile. Yen looks down with a serious expression, preparing to say something important. Yen tells Suha to ignore what Solon said earlier, assuring her that he and Solon don't see eye to eye. Solon is furious, seeing Yin as a traitor for declaring it's a human's duty to be nice to the new student. Suha smiles warmly, thanking them for their kindness. She nervously glances at the one person who isn't being friendly. Suha correctly identifies the hostile boy as Solon, realizing he doesn't like her. Solon turns away with a huff. Confirming her fears, Suha concludes with a sad expression that he must hate her. She thinks to herself that even though she's used to being hated, it still hurts. Nevertheless, she looks up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Suha thinks that despite their initial cold stares, this is the first time she's been welcomed so warmly. Blushing, she wonders if these boys are all Helly's friends. Her gaze shifts to Helly, and she wonders what on earth he told them about her. Yin and Cheyenne kindly tell Suha she can leave if she wants, while Solon glares in the background. Helly asks Suha where she's headed, catching her off guard as the group surrounds her. She nervously explains she just wanted to look around the campus. Helly offers to show her around, suggesting they start with the library since she likes to read. Overjoyed, Suha excitedly asks if he would really do that for her. Cheyenne eagerly volunteers to tag along, and Suha happily agrees. Yin and Gino immediately join in, crowding around a flustered Suha and promising to show her around together. Solon shouts in disbelief, questioning why all of them are going on a simple campus tour. The boisterous group starts to move, trying to convince an angry Solon to join as he yells at them to just go. Helly shows off the stunning, multi-level library, and Suha marvels at the vast collection of books. Suha asks Helly about the book he was reading, and he pauses thoughtfully. He explains it's a very old book that requires special permission to borrow. Suha is surprised, but understands the restriction. Helly smiles warmly, promising to tell her all about the book once he's finished reading it. Suha is thrilled by his promise, and returns his bright smile. As they walk through the grand hallways, Cheyenne points out the classrooms for each grade level, which Suha takes note of. Cheyenne proudly tells Suha that he's also a 10th grader, just like her. Gino cheerfully adds that he and Yin are in 11th grade, pointedly skipping over the fuming Solon. Gino concludes that Helly is in 12th grade, and Suha looks up at him with interest. Suha naively comments that it's cool they're all so close despite their different ages, which gets a surprised reaction from the boys. Solon stares at her with his deep, narrowed eyes. Helly calmly smiles and explains that they all grew up together. Suha is confused by his statement, thinking they can't all be biological brothers. He clarifies that they all came from the same orphanage and have no parents. Suha is taken aback by this revelation, silently processing the sad news. As an angry Solon crackles with electric-like rage, he mentally scolds Helly for telling her, while Gino nervously apologizes. Gino quickly changes the subject, pointing to a field where students are practicing for a nightball game and mentioning 2 other friends might be there. Suha asks about the other 2, and Gino explains their friend group usually consists of 7 people. Gino explains with a smirk that the 2 absent friends are taking the nightball game very seriously. Yin adds that the 2 of them are extremely competitive and have been practicing hard. Yin confidently declares their team will win, which Suha finds arrogant, but she politely responds to his words. Suha begins to ask what kind of sport nightball is. Suddenly, Yan's eyes widen in alarm as something comes speeding toward them. Thwack! An object violently collides with Yan, sending debris flying as he braces for impact. Whoosh! Suha screams as she is suddenly pulled away, dodging the impact. Gino reacts quickly, casting a protective shield as the others move to help. The tattered remains of Nightball fall to the ground as a voiceover curses the players for being idiots. And enraged, Yin confronts the 2 approaching players, one of whom apologizes profusely for the errant ball. Yin calls out the players' names, Jaka and Noah, who are relieved the ball flew toward him and not someone else. As Jaka and Noah wave apologetically from a distance, a furious Yin mutters to himself in frustration. Yan's anger quickly turns to concern as he asks the startled Suha if she's okay. Suha finds herself safely in Helly's arms, realizing he was the one who pulled her away. Overwhelmed and blushing, Suha thanks everyone for the tour and their help. Helly smiles warmly, telling her not to mention it, as they had fun too. Whoosh! Suha abruptly announces her departure and dashes off, leaving the boys to watch her go in confusion. Cheyenne wonders if they scared her off, while Helly confirms she's gone. Phew! Suha leaned against the wall at the end of the hallway, panting from her hasty escape. She thought to herself how she had almost been mortified and admitted that this was the first time she had been surrounded by so many boys. An unseen person spoke to her, and Suha looked up in alarm. Solon was standing over her, arrogantly asking if she knew his name. Suha looked up and stared at him, rendered speechless by his sudden confrontation. Solon's heterochromatic eyes were glaring sharply at her. Cornered by the doorway, Suha stammered nervously as Solon blocked her path. She tentatively gave the correct answer, identifying him as Solon. Suha added that she knew his name because everyone called him that, which seemed to surprise the silent Solon. Humph! Solon scoffed and turned to leave, seemingly satisfied with her answer. Suha quickly called for him to wait, stopping him in his tracks. When he turned around, she looked at him with sincere gratitude and thanked him for what he had just done. Solon looked genuinely confused and asked why she was thanking him. She began to explain that he had just pulled her back from danger. Suha clarified that it was when the ball had almost hit her and she remembered his hand grabbing her jacket. Caught off guard by her sudden gratitude, Solon blushed deeply. A flustered Solon defensively shouted that he wasn't saving her, just brushing dust off her jacket. Suha found the excuse cute. Suha smiled warmly, thanked him anyway, and expressed her hope to become friends with him. Solon's expression hardened, and he coldly told her not to even think about hanging out with them. Suha was stunned into silence by his harsh and direct rejection. He continued, saying his clique doesn't associate with outsiders. Solon leaned in closer, telling her this especially applied to her, leaving Suha feeling both hurt and confused. He narrowed his eyes, admitting there was something strange about her. Solon turned away in frustration, admitting to an inexplicable pull he felt towards her, before ordering her to stay away and storming off. The scene changed, showing the Academy's grand clock tower against the twilight sky. Later, the boys gathered in the lounge, where Gino said he finally understood what Helly meant. Cheyenne clutched his chest, agreeing that they all felt a strange pull towards Suha. Gino confirmed he was talking about Suha, stating that while she wasn't one of them, there was definitely something different. He elaborated with a blush, feeling as if some mysterious force was controlling his emotions around her. John chimed in with his agreement, equally flustered and confused by the unfamiliar feeling. He clarified that the feeling was like an overwhelming desire to do anything she wanted, to which the others shouted in unison that he had hit the nail on the head. Ding! Cheyenne blushed while clutching his chest, wondering if this strange feeling was love. Gino smiled shyly, dismissing the idea that they could feel an emotion like love. John agreed with a serious expression, adding that what they were feeling was more than that. He looked at his friends with a calm and knowing smile. The scene cut to a heartbroken Suha, sobbing in the hallway as tears streamed down her face. Solon stopped short, startled by the sight of her crying, and demanded to know what had happened. Suha cried that she would promise never to greet them again, but a flustered Solon immediately backtracked, telling her to go ahead and greet them. Blushing and panicking, Solon shouted for her to talk to them whenever she wanted and to do as she pleased. Standing at the end of the hall, he warned her not to get the wrong idea. He began to explain that his earlier warning for her not to hang out with them wasn't what she thought. Solon clarified that it wasn't because he hated her. As she listened tearfully, he struggled to explain the real reason, trailing off with, because we're. Suha looked at him, her expression softening as she waited for his explanation. Solon gave up, turning away and muttering that it was pointless, as the others wouldn't listen to him anyway. He told her to forget what he had just said and quickly said goodbye. As he walked away down the hall, he quietly wished her a good night. Suha, surprised but pleased, called back a good night to Solon. The scene cut to a wide shot of Desolace Academy under a starry sky. The next morning, Suha adjusted her bow tie with a soft rustle, preparing for the new day. Whoosh! She took a deep breath and closed her eyes, thinking her first day had finally arrived. Thump! She stood before a large door, ready for her first day at Celestia Academy. She looked up in surprise to find Helly standing right in front of her. Helly smiled gently and told Suha it was time to go. A flustered Suha asked where they were going and why he had waited for her. He explained that he was waiting to go to class with her reminding her of their promise to be friends. Suha blushed, thinking how thoughtful Heli was to worry about her being awkward on her first day. As they walked through the crowded hallway, dozens of students greeted the popular Heli warmly. Suha watched in awe, realizing just how beloved Heli was by everyone. It wasn't surprising, she thought, considering how handsome and gentle he was. Her smile faltered slightly as she concluded that he must be kind to everyone. Heli glanced over, noticing the sudden change in her expression. He called her name, and a startled Suha looked up at him. Heli leaned in and quietly asked if he was making her uncomfortable. Suha vehemently denied it, shouting that it wasn't because of him at all. As Heli listened patiently, she added that it was actually the opposite. Suha explained her own worry, afraid that she was the one making him uncomfortable. She voiced her concern that his close-knit group wouldn't want a newcomer intruding. Heli smiled warmly, finding her worry ridiculous, and then accurately guessed that Solon had said something. Suha panicked internally, wondering how he could possibly know about her conversation with Solon. Heli kindly reassured her not to worry, insisting that Solon hadn't meant any harm. He began to explain that Solon's strange behavior wasn't because of her. A brief flashback showed Solon from the previous night, struggling to find the right words. Heli's voice echoed directly in her mind, revealing that they had a secret. A shocked Suha realized he had just spoken directly inside her head. Heli calmly confirmed her discovery, explaining that he had used telepathy. Suha was speechless, processing the stunning revelation. Heli looked at her kindly, telling her he was sharing this secret because he trusted her. He smiled and wished her luck in class before the two parted ways. A flustered Suha stammered a quick goodbye, wishing him luck as well. Cheyenne suddenly appeared with a bright smile, excitedly telling Suha that they were in the same class. Suha sighed in relief, thinking it was great that Cheyenne was in her class. Cheyenne cheerfully invited Suha to sit next to him, but she nervously pointed out that the seat was already taken. He smiled warmly, brushing off her concern by saying it was fine. Cheyenne casually suggested that Solon, who was standing gloomily behind Suha, could find another seat. A shocked Suha whipped around to face Solon. Solon gave her a silent and unsettling smile, his heterochromatic pupils holding an intense gaze. Cheyenne cheerfully turned to Solon, telling him to give his seat to Suha. Suha desperately insisted that Solon keep his seat, but he scoffed and told her to just sit, deciding to move elsewhere himself. Glare. As Suha sat down, Solon glared at her with a furious look that terrified her. Ding-dong, the bell rang, signaling the end of class, and the scene transitioned to the noisy hallway. After class, Cheyenne asked Suha about her plans for the day. Suha smiled and explained that she planned to clean her room. She clarified that there was a lot of mess to organize and things to throw away. Cheyenne was delighted and immediately volunteered to help her clean. The scene cut to a wide shot of students chatting in the academy hall. Standing by her locker, Suha was startled by the sound of someone calling her name. She turned to see it was Heli calling her and couldn't help but blush. Heli waved with a gentle smile and asked how her first day of classes was, to which she replied that it was fun. Suha cheerfully added that having Cheyenne in class made things much easier. Heli connected the dots, realizing this meant she was also in the same class as Solon. She happily confirmed this, adding that Solon had even given up his seat for her. Heli seemed a bit surprised and concerned to hear this news. Solon suddenly appeared, angrily correcting her that she had stolen his seat, not that he had given it to her. A silver-haired student walked over, telling Solon he should have given up the seat anyway and to mind his manners. John chimed in with a laugh, agreeing that since Suha was new, everyone should be a little kinder. Sihun playfully suggested that Solon could just stand at the back of the classroom. Tremble. Ganged up on, Solon trembled with rage, while Suha watched awkwardly. Suha explained to Heli that she had mentioned cleaning her room, and now all the boys had offered to help. Heli leaned close to a startled Suha and asked if he could come along too. Solon glared fiercely, clearly displeased with this turn of events. Standing before a large wooden door, Suha nervously spoke to the boys behind her. Click rustle. Inside her messy room, she insisted she could clean it herself, while John and the silver-haired boy had already started working immediately. The silver-haired boy confidently told Suha to just stand aside and watch them handle it. John agreed, adding that it would only take a second as he removed his blazer. Cheyenne appeared in full cleaning gear, proclaiming it was his favorite activity, causing an irritated Solon to call him a liar. Overwhelmed by their enthusiasm, Suha shouted that she would help too. Clang! The silver-haired boy grabbed a large, covered box. His expression turned to horror as he realized what was inside, shouting for her to wait. Swoosh! Suha had already lifted the surprisingly heavy box, asking what was in it. Thud! The lid slid off, revealing a large set of dumbbells. Suha's eyes widened at the contents of the box. Holding it effortlessly, she revealed it contained 100 kilograms of dumbbells, stunning the silver-haired boy. He stared at her in disbelief, breaking out in a cold sweat from the shock. Suha looked equally shocked, unable to believe her own strength. The entire group stood frozen in silence, staring in amazement as Suha held the incredible weight. Suha panicked, realizing her secret of superhuman strength was out. Heli calmly walked over to the panicked Suha, offering to take the heavy box from her. He reassured her that it was okay, revealing that he also possessed special powers. Just like her, Heli leaned in and quietly asked if his powers scared her or made her hate him. Shake! A flustered Suha vehemently denied that she would be scared or hate him because of his powers. Heli clarified that they were the same, implying that they all possessed special powers just like her. An angry Solon shouted at Heli, realizing he had revealed the telepathy to Suha and broken their trust. Gina watched the confrontation with a nervous, toothy grin. Jean and Cheyenne, meanwhile, watched with equally serious and worried expressions. Heli calmly confirmed with a gentle smile that he had been using telepathy on her since earlier that day. Blushing and furious, Solon gritted his teeth and shouted Heli's name in frustration. A worried John began to question Heli's decision, trailing off with, "We were supposed to keep it secret." Heli turned to the surprise Suha and asked her to keep his power a secret. Suha immediately and enthusiastically promised that she would never tell anyone. Heli smiled gently, suggesting they keep their powers a secret between the two of them. Nod. A blushing Suha eagerly agreed, nodding her head enthusiastically. Heli smiled sincerely and told Suha that he thought her power was really cool. A blushing Suha shyly returned the compliment, stammering that his power was cool too. She admitted she was surprised at first, but now thought telepathy was awesome. Cheyenne suddenly appeared upside down on the ceiling, cheerfully announcing that he could stick to walls. An annoyed Solon shouted at Cheyenne, angry that he was revealing his power too. Whoa! John revealed that the giant dumbbells were his and effortlessly balanced them on his fingertip. The angry and impatient Solon now yelled at John for joining in. Wushu! Gino created a ball of fire in his palm, thoughtfully offering to warm her hands whenever they were cold. A despairing Solon shouted in frustration and disbelief as Gino also showed off his power. Sparkle! Suha turned to Solon with wide, curious eyes, clearly waiting for his turn. A panicked and blushing Solon defensively shouted at her, denying that he had any powers. Suha looked a little disappointed, but accepted his denial, simply saying she understood. He quickly backtracked, admitting he did have a power but stubbornly refused to show her. Turn! Eager to flee the scene, Solon shouted for everyone to finish up and leave quickly. As the others laughed inside the room, a flustered Solon stood guard at the door, clearly embarrassed by the teasing. Heli smiled kindly and told Suha they were leaving now, wishing her sweet dreams. Suha smiled gratefully, thanking Heli for everything he had done for her that day. He gave her a warm, parting glance, promising to see her tomorrow. As the boys waved goodbye cheerfully from the doorway, Suha waved back shyly. Thump! After they left, Suha closed the door to her now clean room. Alone in her room, Suha smiled in relief, thinking about the wonderful friend she had just made. As she looked around the quiet room, her thoughts drifted and she came to an important realization. It dawned on her that she wasn't the only one with special powers. She admitted she was surprised and wondered if her powers made others feel the same way. She contemplated the fact that they all had special abilities, their amazing powers flashing through her mind. A bold idea formed in her mind, and she wondered if they could possibly be. She immediately blushed and scolded herself, dismissing the wild thought. A flashback showed her lifetime of being misunderstood and bullied for having strange powers. Remembering her own tears, she resolved not to judge them the way those bullies had judged her. She remembered Heli's trusting expression, thinking he was the only person besides Chris to ever trust her. With renewed determination, Suha decided that she trusted Heli completely. In return, she accepted the fact that if someone like her could exist, then people like Heli and his friends could exist too. With a soft smile, she came to a final, peaceful conclusion about her new circumstances. She was no longer alone, an image of herself happily surrounded by her new friends appearing in her mind. The scene cut to a panoramic view of the academy bathed in moonlight. Swoosh, thump. On a nearby rooftop, a group of mysterious figures landed with acrobatic grace. One of them crouched low, remarking with disgust that the place reeked of that stench. Under the full moon, the group's eyes glowed ominously as their leader demanded to know where the vampires were. At the edge of the academy grounds, a group of figures looked up at the main building, one of them wondering if this was the school. Under the full moon, their eyes glowed ominously as the leader asked if this was where the vampires were. The scene changed to the sturdy wooden door of Suha's room. Wow. Suha stood in the doorway, absolutely delighted by the sight before her. Sparkle. She marveled at her perfectly tidy room, thinking how quickly it was cleaned with the help of her new friends. She spotted a forgotten bag of trash, realizing they had missed it, and decided to take it out herself. Heavy footsteps. Suha walked alone across the dark academy grounds, carrying the heavy bag. She muttered to herself that the path to the dumpsters was much darker and farther than she had expected. Thinking of her late class schedule, she lamented that it was always late by the time she finished her tasks. A blush crept onto her face as a particular thought crossed her mind. Nearing the dumpsters, she thought to herself that she wished she could tell the people who thought she was a vampire that she was actually the one who was scared of them. Toss. She nervously reached out to throw the bag into the large dumpster. Loom. Before she could, a shadowy figure appeared behind her, getting her attention with an "excuse me." Grab. Suddenly, Suha's own hand shot out and grabbed her attacker's wrist, stopping him. Swoosh. Using her immense strength, she effortlessly flipped the tall figure over her shoulder. Smash! Ugh. The attacker hit the ground hard, the force cracking the pavement as she let out a shriek. Huh! Suha panted as she demanded to know who he was, frantically asking if he was a vampire. The boy groaned in pain, clutching his back and revealing his school uniform. Rush. Two other boys rushed onto the scene, shouting Khan's name in alarm, which startled Suha. One of the newcomers bared his fangs, angrily questioning how she dared to attack Khan. Suha whipped around to face the new threat, a single bead of sweat on her cheek. The boy froze mid-charge, his furious expression turning to shock as he realized he was attacking a girl. Wham! Taking advantage of his hesitation, Suha swung a powerful punch, sending him spinning. Aki let out a pained cry as the impact landed. Thud swoosh. As the second boy, Najak, fell, a third jumped into the fray, shouting his name. The third boy stared at Suha in disbelief, impressed that she had taken down Najak, and asked what on earth she was. Suha shot back that she should be asking them, accusing them all of being vampires. The boy, shocked and offended by her accusation, told her to take that back immediately. Step. A fourth student named Enzi arrived, calmly asking her not to mistake them for vampires. Enzi explained with a strange smile that calling them vampires was the greatest insult. Spring. Najak leaped to his feet, furiously declaring that he couldn't stand being mistaken for a vampire. Shiver. The purple-haired boy shuddered in disgust, shouting that the mere thought gave him goosebumps. Enzi smiled and clarified for Suha that they all hated vampires. Khan, standing beside a surprised Suha, added that they hated vampires more than anyone else in the world. The scene cut to a bright full moon hanging in the cloudy night sky. A flustered Suha nervously introduced herself and apologized for her actions, explaining that she was just startled. Khan smiled warmly and held up his hands, apologizing in turn for scaring her. Najak smiled sheepishly, also apologizing for rushing at her, and formally introduced himself. The purple-haired boy cheerfully introduced himself as Tehale, the youngest, and reassured her that Khan and Najak were very strong. Enzi introduced himself as well, offering a sincere apology for frightening her. Ha! Khan scratched the back of his neck, thinking to himself that her reaction was strange. As Suha looked at him, she found it odd that they were acting as if her superhuman strength was no big deal, unlike others who always assumed she was a vampire. She addressed Khan, noting that he wasn't wearing her school's uniform. Swoosh. Khan's expression turned serious as she asked what they were doing on school grounds. Najak proudly explained that they were from Sunshine City School. Tehale added with a bright smile that they were here to find a few punks. His expression suddenly turned to disgust as he said he thought he smelled something foul. Solon and Gino appear behind a startled Suha, with Gino demanding to know what the other group was doing with the girl so late. Suha, caught between the two groups, tried to mediate as Gino demanded to know what these outsiders wanted with one of their students. An angry Solon gritted his teeth and shouted that the other group was the one who should be talking. A boy with glasses calmly called Tahal's name, trying to de-escalate the situation. Step. A white-haired student stepped forward, bringing up the murder that had occurred a few days ago. Khan's eyes glinted as he revealed the victim was a student from their school. Suha gasped at the grim news. Tahal and the white-haired boy dismissively asked what the murder had to do with them. Solon lost his patience and shouted at them to stop playing dumb. Khan, surrounded by a red aura, ominously asked if they were sure they wouldn't regret their words. The white-haired boy taunted them, saying they only attacked at night because they were too weak to face them otherwise. Swoosh! An enraged Khan lunged forward, baring his fangs and claws, shouting at the punk. Swoosh! The white-haired boy prepared to counter, his eyes glowing with blue energy. A desperate voice suddenly shouted for them to stop. Thud! Suha leaped between the two combatants, blocking both of their attacks with her bare hands. Her eyes squeezed shut, she desperately screamed for them to stop fighting. Roar! Khan roared in fury, struggling mightily against Suha's powerful grip. The white-haired boy looked down in shock, wondering how a girl could be so strong. Tahal tried to explain that they were just trying to protect her from the other group. Suha shouted that it was all a misunderstanding, pleading with both sides to back down. Both Tahal and the white-haired boy were left dumbfounded and confused by her intervention. A calm voice from above asked what they were all doing here. The voice followed up by asking why they were gathered so late. As everyone looked up in surprise, the students recognized the newcomer, shouting Heli's name. Roar! Khan and his friends looked up at Heli with clear hostility. A surprised but relieved Suha stammered Heli's name. Heli looked down at the entire group, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. His gaze sharpened as he ordered all of them to get away from Suha. Heli immediately stood alone, facing the two rival groups that had Suha trapped in the middle. Suha quickly tried to explain to Heli that it was just a misunderstanding while taking out the trash. Step. Heli ignored her, walking silently and purposefully toward the center of the confrontation. Heli put a protective arm around Suha's shoulder, insisting on taking her back to her room for her safety. As they turned to leave, an angry voice shouted for Heli to stop. Khan confronted Heli, demanding to know who gave him permission to leave and insisting they weren't finished. Heli retorted with a smirk that he was finished and ordered them to leave the campus immediately. Khan directly accused Heli and his friends of murdering their classmate. Heli, with an ominous look in his eyes, calmly told Khan he had the wrong people. Najak angrily rushed forward, demanding to know if that was really all he had to say. Cheyenne calmly denied the accusation, stating they wouldn't do something like that. Solon angrily demanded that they prove their innocence. The white-haired boy calmly countered, asking if they could prove they did it. Khan stepped forward, revealing they came because they believed they had proof. A nervous Suha looked up at Heli, worried about the escalating tension. Heli, surrounded by a dark aura, challenged Khan, asking what he would do even if they were the culprits. Suha looked on in horror at Heli's apparent admission. Swoosh! An enraged Khan shouted that he knew it was them all along. Glare! Heli's eyes burned with a terrifying red light as the confrontation reached its peak. A crying Suha grabbed Heli's arm, desperately pleading with him not to fight. She turned to the others, gingerly pleading with Tahal and everyone to stop the violence. Solon turned away with a frustrated expression, seemingly swayed by Suha's plea. Heli looked down at Suha, his expression serious and unreadable in the moonlight. He suddenly apologized to a surprised Suha. She could only ask why. Heli promised with a gentle smile that they wouldn't fight and apologized again for scaring her. Heli addressed Khan, admitting he understood why their group was under suspicion. He swore his group had nothing to do with the murder, pleading with Khan to believe him. Khan listened intently, his expression tight with suspicion and thought. Najak angrily rejected the plea, demanding to know why they should simply be believed. The white-haired boy calmly replied that they didn't have to, his friend standing ready behind him. Heli pulled Suha closer protectively, insisting they shouldn't fight here because it was scaring her. A bead of sweat ran down Suha's cheek as she looked on, clearly distressed by the tension. Khan and Najak glared. Their expressions hardened with unresolved anger and distrust. Heli smiled slyly, suggesting that if they insisted on a confrontation, there was another way. He proposed settling their differences at the upcoming nightball tournament, with a shot of the Grand Stadium. Standing before the rival group, Heli suggested settling things with fair sportsmanship. Instead of a group brawl, Heli watched them with a confident, knowing smile, awaiting their answer. Khan and Najak looked furious, fire in their eyes, as they processed the unexpected challenge. Heli gently gets Suha's attention, who is startled and looks up at him. Khan tells Suha they are leaving entirely for her sake and offers a final apology for frightening her again. An overwhelmed Suha quickly says it's okay. Khan's expression turns unusually serious as he declares that the murder incident and the game are two separate matters. Solon and the white-haired boy issue a stern warning, telling their rivals to be smart because they'll be watching them. Khan glares back with fiery determination, vowing to look forward to crushing them in the nightball game. Heli lets out a confident smirk. He accepts the terms, stating that they will also remain vigilant. As Khan leaves with his men, a frustrated Najak questions his decision to back down. Muttering, the two groups go their separate ways, with Khan's team muttering complaints and frustration as they leave. One of Khan's friends complains that their rivals are overconfident, but Enzi reassures them that with everyone rejoining the team, they will have a chance. Enzi adjusts his glasses, his eyes glinting with calm confidence as he reaffirms their odds of winning. Heli's group watches them go, with Solon and the white-haired boy still maintaining their stern gazes. After the confrontation ends, Heli turns to Suha with a warm smile and asks if she's ready to go. Footsteps. The four of them begin to leave the scene. Suha looks up at Heli and apologizes to him, prompting him to ask what for. A blushing Heli clarifies that he's sorry for almost getting into a fight in front of her. Suha comforts him with a radiant smile, saying he doesn't need to apologize because he stopped the moment she asked. Nod. Heli smiles in agreement as Suha insists that's what matters most. Footsteps. The group walks together through a grand stone archway, a nearby lamp flickering with light. Suha reflects on the encounter, thinking to herself that it was really strange. She recalls the tense atmosphere of the moment with a worried expression. Glare. A flashback shows Heli's eyes burning with a terrifying red glow. Suha remembers the threatening aura he gave off, thinking that even though he didn't attack, she felt an overwhelming instinct that she absolutely had to stop him. She concludes her thoughts, convinced that something terrible would have happened if she hadn't intervened. She nervously glances at the boy walking beside her. Smile. Heli catches her gaze and offers a gentle, disarming smile. The scene quietly transitions to the bright moon hanging in the night sky. A panoramic shot reveals the vast, brightly lit academy grounds under the starry sky. Against the backdrop of the stars, a pale, slender hand appears. Whoosh! A boy with striking blue-gray hair and heterochromia stands alone, holding out his hand. Thump! His hand suddenly transforms, sprouting blue fur and sharp, menacing claws. His eyes widen in realization as he thinks to himself that he's actually... Enzi appears behind him, calmly finishing his thought by pointing out that he is a werewolf. Whoosh! Startled by the unexpected visitor, the blue-haired boy spins around, baring his fangs and demanding to know who's there. Enzi watches him calmly, saying this reminds him of something from the past. He tells the blue-haired boy that although they've often seen each other around, he's never formally introduced himself. He extends a hand for a handshake, introducing himself as Enzi and confirming that he is also a werewolf. The blue-haired boy glares defensively as Enzi points out that, unlike him, he is not a half-blood. He takes a nervous step back, stammering that he's not one of them. Enzi offers a reassuring smile, telling him there's no need to hide what he's seen, and begins to ask questions. Fade out. He asks the boy how a half-blood of a vampire and a werewolf could possibly exist. Enzi explains that the two races have always been mortal enemies, finishing his thought by stating that they are naturally hostile to one another. The blue-haired boy grits his teeth. With a curious smile, Enzi asks how such a union could have happened. The boy glares back defiantly, demanding to know why he should tell Enzi anything. Shrug. Enzi gives a casual shrug, acknowledging that he's under no obligation to answer. He clarifies that he was only asking out of curiosity and if the boy doesn't want to say, he doesn't have to share. The boy's frustration erupts, and he demands to know why Enzi is on their campus so late. Enzi calmly begins to explain that he and his friends were there to ask another group about something. He asks the boy if he's heard about the recent murder, catching him off guard. Enzi's expression darkens as he reveals the victim was a student from his school. He describes the gruesome details, distinct bite marks on the neck and the body completely drained of blood. The blue-haired boy, angered by the implication, asks if Enzi is accusing them of murder. When Enzi points out that his group is the only one of their kind in the area, the boy angrily denies they would do such a thing. He admits that while they have urges, he assumes it's the same for werewolves. Enzi looks up at the sky, admitting the urges are especially strong on the night of a full moon. He confirms that when the full moon rises, their instincts grow stronger. Wolf howl. A wolf's howl echoes in the distance as Enzi explains they feel an urge to return to their natural instincts. His gaze becomes firm as he states seriously that despite the urges, they do not harm humans. The blue-haired boy shouts back that they don't either, insisting they are not like other vampires. He further explains that from his group's perspective, it's the other vampires who are different from them. Enzi calmly asks him what he thinks makes his group so different. The boy grits his teeth in frustration, unable to give a clear answer. He mutters Enzi's name under his breath. Angrily, he changes the subject, asking if Enzi wants to know how he could be a half-blood. With a strained expression, he says that he can't answer that question. He forces a pained smile, admitting it's because he doesn't know the answer himself. His face fills with anguish as he confesses he has no idea how he even exists. He reveals that it's not just him. None of his friends know their origins either. He struggles to explain that it feels like they were created or simply woke up from a long dream. Enzi listens intently, realizing they have no memories of their past. The blue-haired boy falls silent, sweating and gritting his teeth in anguish. He looks up with renewed determination, insisting that regardless of their origins, the murder has nothing to do with them. Enzi points out that people will lump all vampires together, but the boy retorts that his group doesn't see the others as their kind. Enzi listens quietly with a thoughtful and inscrutable expression. The boy defiantly states that Enzi doesn't have to believe him, as he's not looking for his trust. Enzi offers a slight smile, saying he hopes the boy is telling the truth. Reaching out, he extends his hand in a peaceful gesture, reminding the boy that he is half werewolf. After all, Enzi looks at him with a gentle and knowing smile. A voice suddenly calls out for Enzi in the distance, asking where he went, which startles him. Retracting hand, he quickly pulls his hand back, realizing he has to go. Before leaving, Enzi smiles and suggests that the next time they meet, they should at least greet each other properly. Enzi bids the boy farewell under the bright full moon as he departs. The blue-haired boy is left speechless by their conversation. Clenching fist, he angrily clenches his fist, defiantly rejecting Enzi's goodwill with a who cares. The scene shifts to a large clock tower, where Suha is thanking someone for walking her back. Suha stands with her friends and receives a polite "you're welcome" from Heli. Heli then suggests that for safety, they should go take out the trash together next time, especially late at night. A blushing Suha sweats nervously, but agrees it sounds like a good idea. She then turns to the other two boys with a radiant smile. Suha correctly identifies them, addressing the purple-haired boy as Noah and the white-haired boy as Jaka. She thanks them both for coming to her aid after hearing the commotion earlier. Jaka seems surprised but confirms her guess, though he appears a bit flustered. A thought suddenly occurs to Suha, and she turns to ask Heli how he knew she was there in the first place. Heli claims with a sheepish smile that he was just passing by. Suha cheerfully accepts his explanation. Really? Thanks then. Pause. She starts to say something more but holds back, her face turning bright red. Heli looks at her expectantly, asking what she was about to say. Head down, mortified, Suha quickly lowers her head and hastily wishes him a good night. She thinks to herself in a panic that she almost told him she was glad he came. Turning, she quickly turns around and also wishes Noah and Jaka a good night. Nod. They awkwardly agree, still observing the interaction. Heli watches her with a gentle and knowing smile. He leans in closer, softly wishing Suha a good night. Overwhelmed and blushing, Suha stammers a quick goodbye and smiles. Heli watches her leave with a warm expression on his face. Slam. Suha closes the door, leaving Heli standing alone in the hallway. Heli maintains his calm expression while Noah and Jaka watch from behind him. Whoosh! Suddenly, Noah and Jaka rush toward him, demanding to know who Suha really is. Helly cheerfully explains that she's the new transfer student, surprised they haven't met her yet. Jaka presses further, asking what she is and declaring that she is definitely not an ordinary human. In a flashback, Jaka recalls walking with Noah after an eyeball practice. Sizzle. He remembers a sudden, tingling sensation that caught his attention. He explains that he sensed an unusually strong fluctuation of energy hovering near the garbage disposal area. He goes on to reveal that Suha was standing right in the center of that powerful vortex. The flashback shows Suha surrounded by an overwhelming purple aura. Jaka concludes that it was an overwhelming fluctuation he had never felt before. Noah agrees, adding that Suha stopped them just as they were about to fight their rivals. He recalls how they were completely frozen, feeling as if her words had physically bound them. Jaka searches Helly's expression with wide eyes, asking if Suha is one of them. With a gentle smile, Helly calmly states that she is not. He begins to recall a conversation, thinking about how she told him that more than anyone. The scene cuts to Suha standing dejectedly in front of her door. Suha flashes back to Khan's stern warning, questioning if they really thought his team would show up without proof. Now in her room, she wonders what Khan really meant by that. She then questions if Helly and his friends could really be involved in the recent murders. Her thoughts drift to a previous conversation with a maid about the murders happening nearby. The maid had told her there were rumors it was the work of vampires. Suha's expression darkens with worry and suspicion. A flashback reveals a brutal memory, a young boy impaled through the heart with a wooden stake in a coffin. As Suha's inner monologue thinks more than anyone in the world. The thought is completed as the scene shows Suha leaving Helly with both thinking, I hate. Vedi finishes the thought in his mind, vampires, and wonders to himself what Suha really is. Jaka and Noah look at Helly in disbelief, with Jaka asking if Suha is one of them. Helly denies it with a gentle smile and begins to recall Suha telling him that more than anyone in the world. In a flashback, Suha thinks with cold determination that she hates vampires more than anyone in the world. Helly's expression becomes knowing as he completes the thought, confirming that Suha hates vampires. The scene shifts to a grand, moonlit estate, where an unseen person cries out in surprise. A boy with spiky, silver-white hair shouts in disbelief, asking if the werewolf from Sunshine City School came to their school. Helly calmly confirms the visit, explaining that because the murder victim was their student, the werewolves believe his team is responsible. The spiky-haired boy clenches his fists in anger, furious that the werewolves are trying to frame them. Bang! A blue-haired boy enters the room and stops when he finds Helly and his other friends casually gathered inside. The boy, named Solon, glares at everyone with his heterochromatic eyes, demanding to know what they are all doing in his room. The spiky-haired boy cheerfully explains that since their old meeting room now belongs to Suha, they decided to meet in Solon's room instead. A red-haired boy adds with a smile that Solon's room is the neatest and most centrally located. Solon erupts in anger, insisting that if it's for a central location, they should meet in Cheyenne's room. The blonde-haired boy, Cheyenne, immediately protests, complaining that cleaning up afterward is too much of a hassle. Solon angrily reminds Cheyenne that he lied to Suha, telling her that cleaning was his favorite thing in the world. Cheyenne laughs sheepishly, calling Solon a fool and admitting that, of course, he was lying when he said that. Anger. Solon trembles with rage, an angry vein throbbing on his cheek. Jaka changes the subject, telling Solon that the werewolves were just on campus. Solon calmly replies that he already knew they were here. The spiky-haired boy looks shocked, pressing Solon on how he could have possibly known. Suddenly put on the spot, Solon begins to stammer nervously. He defensively covers his nose, claiming he could smell the stench of werewolves and that anyone should have noticed. Solon blushes in disgust, declaring that all werewolves are disgusting and barbaric. Helly calmly tells Solon not to be so harsh, suggesting the werewolves seem to have their reasons for coming. Jaka questions what could have made the werewolves suspect them of the murder. The red-haired boy points out that rumors have already blamed the recent murders on vampires. He explains the typical signs the body completely drained of blood and bite marks on the neck. He concludes that it would be strange not to believe it was vampires, given the evidence. The spiky hair boy adds that it's not surprising, considering all the recent incidents of vampires harming people. Noah starts to argue that their group only drinks. Another boy agrees, and the spiky-haired boy finishes the thought, clarifying that they only do so on that one special day. Helly, sitting calmly on the bed, admits that while they know they are innocent, there is a problem. The scene cuts to Suha lying in bed, sleepless and distraught. She whispers Helly's name, her face filled with worry and confusion. Back in Solin's room, Helly expresses his concern, hoping Suha doesn't misunderstand them. Solin angrily confronts Helly, shouting that he's already done everything to be misunderstood and that he told him to stay away from her. He continues to yell that they all carelessly showed her their powers. This startles the others. Jaka looks at him, confused by the accusation. Jaka gets angry, asking if all of them showed off their powers, while the others blush and fondly recall watching cute ants. Solin confirms Jaka is right, that they were all eager to show off. Solin crosses his arms, proudly declaring that he, of course, did not show his powers. Flinch, Noah calls his bluff, reminding him that he's never shown his powers to any of them, which makes Solin flinch. Solin panics as the others seriously press him on what his power is. The spiky-haired boy speculates that Solin might just be a normal human, which Noah considers. Bite. Cheyenne playfully bares his fangs, suggesting they bite Solin to find out. Gritting teeth, Solin grinds his teeth in fury, insisting that's not at all. Cheyenne smiles with glowing eyes, telling Solin he's just kidding and that he believes him. Cheyenne teases that Solin's power is nagging and complaining, a remarkable talent, until Helly tells him to stop. Helly refocuses the group, stating he doesn't want to give Suha any more reason for negative misunderstandings. The red-haired boy agrees, pointing out the biggest problem is that she already told Helly she hates vampires most of all. Helly, concerned, admits to himself that he doesn't want Suha to hate him. Solin angrily orders Helly to watch what he says and to stop talking to Suha unless absolutely necessary. He forbids the others from acting like her friends, leaving them in frustrated silence. Jaka seriously agrees with Solin, adding that they all let their guard down too easily around her. Nod nod. Noah concurs, telling everyone to be more careful from now on. In a closed-door meeting, the group collectively agrees to abide by the new rules. The scene shifts to the school grounds at night, where a voice calls out Suha's name. Shine approaches Suha, asking with a blush if she wants to hang out this weekend. An angry Solin tries to intervene as Shine cheerfully asks Suha out. He yells his name. Suha, blushing with excitement, stammers and asks where they would go. Shine's eyes sparkle as he suggests a date to the plaza for ice cream and a walk. He excitedly adds the beach to the plan, and a flustered Suha agrees that it sounds fun. With a hint of surprise, Suha asks if the outing will be just the two of them. Cheyenne laughs excitedly, confirming it will be a date for just the two of them. Smack! Solin suddenly shoves himself between them, announcing that he's coming along too. Turn! Cheyenne turns to Solin furiously, telling him to mind his own business. Solin yells back that he can't trust what Cheyenne might say to Suha. If they're alone, Suha watches, completely bewildered as they argue heatedly over her. Solin reminds Cheyenne of his promise not to get close to her, his face filled with rage. Cheyenne shamelessly admits he lied to himself about that promise, saying Solin was a fool to believe him. Solin, driven mad with anger, lets out a furious scream. Solin decides to tattle, telling Helly, a boy named Gino, a boy named John, Noah, and Jaka about Cheyenne's day plans. Cheyenne furiously demands to know why Solin told everyone about their date. The news that Cheyenne is going on a date with Suha spreads, causing a wave of shock among the others. Solin urges the others to intervene and stop Cheyenne's plans. Instead of objecting, Helly gets a determined glint in his eye, deciding he wants to go too. Gino flashes a wide, fanged smile, thinking wistfully that he wants to join as well. A blushing Jaka quietly wonders if he can join the outing too. Noah agrees, thinking that going to the plaza sounds like fun. Solin stares in horror, shocked that his plan has backfired on every level. As Solin despairs and Shine complains about the growing crowd, Suha sees Helly walking toward them. Helly mentions her plans to go to the plaza for the weekend, making a surprised Suha wonder how he knew. Helly leans in with a gentle smile, softly asking if he can come along too. A blushing Suha happily agrees, telling Helly she'd love for him to come. Helly suddenly appears behind a startled Suha, and her flustered surprise is evident as he smiles. Gasp! The day of the outing arrives, bright and sunny over the water. The scene settles on a vast and beautiful city plaza. The plaza is bustling with people. Suha stands waiting in the plaza until a familiar voice calls her name. Cheyenne waves cheerfully, admitting he had hoped to be the first to arrive. When Suha asks about the others, Cheyenne lies that they were busy, privately cursing them for being unreliable. Cheyenne quickly suggests they have fun on their own, offering to give her a personal tour of the plaza. Suha agrees to the plan, but can't help but feel a pang of disappointment that Helly is busy. Cheyenne excitedly suggests getting ice cream, pointing to a good spot he knows. Suha happily agrees. As they walk, Suha wonders what's keeping Helly so busy and considers asking him. She quickly dismisses the thought, deciding not to pressure him since he must have his reasons. As Cheyenne asks her to pick an ice cream flavor, Suha privately wishes Helly had at least told her he wasn't coming, realizing she could perhaps contact him telepathically. A smiling Suha decides on vanilla ice cream. Suha continues to ponder their telepathic connection as Cheyenne orders a surprisingly large amount of vanilla ice cream. She then remembers a key detail. Their telepathy only works when Helly initiates contact. Admitting she could just call him directly, she remains disappointed by the limitations of this special connection. Cheyenne cheerfully hands Suha a giant vanilla ice cream cone drizzled with chocolate. Smile. He beams proudly, explaining that he asked for extra scoops just for her. Suha is completely stunned by the size of the ice cream. She stammers out a thank you. The two sit together on a park bench, with Cheyenne sighing about how nice it is to be out, which Suha quietly agrees with. Flinch, a voice calling his name from a distance startles Cheyenne mid-lick. Jaka and the red-haired boy angrily scold Cheyenne for sneaking off, reminding him they were supposed to meet at 7. Munch Munch, Cheyenne calmly licks his ice cream, blatantly lying that he told them to meet at 5. Shake, he privately celebrates that his plan worked, allowing him to get to know Suha better alone. Elsewhere, an enraged Solon grits his teeth, vowing not to let Cheyenne get away with his deception. Cheyenne playfully sticks his tongue out, daring his friends to catch him if they can, while Suha watches in confusion. In a comedic fantasy sequence, Cheyenne laughs while rowing a boat with an old man, imagining his escape on the water. Back in reality, Cheyenne hums to himself, while Solon's voice continues to call his name, much to Suha's confusion. Suha gently calls Cheyenne's name to get his attention. She thanks him sincerely, explaining that she heard everyone else was busy. Suha continues that she knows he must be busy too and really appreciates him making time for her. This touches Cheyenne's heart. A flustered Cheyenne turns away, trying to play it cool by claiming he's just a considerate person. While enjoying their ice cream, Suha shyly admits this is her first time at the plaza. Cheyenne reacts with extreme shock, shouting in disbelief and asking her why. Suha looks away nervously, admitting that being in crowded public places is difficult for her. Surrounded by a vision of menacing eyes, she confesses that crowds scare her. She lowers her head, clearly embarrassed by her confession. Cheyenne's expression softens with concern and understanding. He thoughtfully suggests they go on a boat ride to avoid the crowds, much to Suha's surprise. He explains they can be out on the water before sunset, so she can feel more comfortable. Cheyenne tells her he'll go get the tickets, and a grateful Suha happily agrees. Left alone, Suha sits on a bench by a fountain, patiently waiting for Cheyenne to return. A familiar voice calls her name, and she looks up to find Helly. To her surprise, Helly contacts her telepathically, asking if she's at the plaza right now. Suha cheerfully confirms that she is. She shyly mentions that she heard he was busy today. Helly gently corrects her, explaining that he wasn't busy, he just had something important to do. A curious Suha asks what that important task was, and he softly replies that his important task was to see you, leaving Suha blushing and speechless. Helly closes his eyes, a gentle and knowing smile on his face. Blush. A flustered Suha eats her ice cream, admitting she didn't expect that and didn't think he was the type to joke around. He smiles sweetly, assuring her that he's not joking. Suha becomes even more flustered, getting ice cream on her cheek as she questions if he's being serious. Helly apologizes for being late on such an important occasion and promises he'll be there soon. A blushing Suha stammers her agreement. Her heart pounds as she thinks, still in disbelief, that he's coming after all. Suha suddenly remembers that Cheyenne is getting boat tickets and decides she needs to tell him that Helly is joining them. She runs through the city streets, looking for the ticket booth. As she rounds a corner, she stops short, spotting a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Lurking in a dark alley. Smack! A monstrous hand with sharp, red-tipped claws lunges out and grabs her. Suha's eyes widen in sheer terror. Yank! She is violently dragged off the street and into the dark alleyway. Splat! Her giant ice cream cone smashes onto the cobblestone ground. Dragging. The hooded figure drags a struggling Suha into the narrow passage. The attacker's terrifying red eyes stare down at her as she realizes who her captor is. Grip! The figure's hand tightens on her, overpowering her struggles. Slam! Suha is violently thrown against a brick wall by her hooded attacker. Gasping, Suha gasps for air, looking down at her attacker, who is now buried under a pile of rubble. As she catches her breath, she realizes with growing unease that something feels very wrong about her assailant. Her gaze was fixed on the creature's hand, noticing its abnormally long and sharp nails, the tips stained blood red. Her mind raced in terror, struggling to comprehend the horrifying truth. As the truth dawned on her, the figure began to rise from the rubble, its body emitting cracking and reforming sounds. Click-clack, the creature's limbs twisted and contorted as it slowly got to its feet. With a whoosh, the hood fell back, revealing a grotesque face with glowing red eyes and a mouth full of fangs. Suha gasped in horror, her face turning deathly pale from extreme fear. Heavy footsteps echoed as the creature advanced toward her. She stammered in realization that this was a real vampire, whispering in disbelief as her body froze in fear. Roar! The vampire let out a ferocious roar, its massive, fanged mouth wide open. With a smack, a hand suddenly clamped tightly over the vampire's mouth. Its cry was cut short. Bam! Cheyenne delivered a devastating punch, completely shattering the vampire's head, his eyes glowing a deep crimson with rage. Cheyenne looked down at the defeated monster with an icy gaze. Suha collapsed in the alley, staring at the aftermath of the brutal fight. Her eyes widened in terror as she finally realized she had just encountered a real vampire. As reality set in, she screamed again. Roar! The vampire's grotesque roar echoed through the alley once more. As Suha watched the creature fall, she cried out in shock. Shoo! Cheyenne rushed to her side, anxiously asking if she was okay. Still trembling, Suha explained that she was looking for him when a monster suddenly attacked her. With a flash, the red eye on the fallen vampire's head flickered with renewed malice. With a low growl, the vampire leaped up from the ground, lunging at Cheyenne. Cheyenne gasped, sensing the attack from behind, revealing his own fangs in surprise. With a thud, the monster tackled Cheyenne to the ground, and he let out a cry of pain. Suha screamed Cheyenne's name, watching in horror as he was pinned down. She gritted her teeth, determined to do something despite being consumed by fear. With a whoosh, Suha charged into the fray, shouting his name again. She swung a punch with all her might, aiming straight for the vampire's head. The vampire turned its head, its glowing red eyes widening in surprise at her sudden attack. As Suha made contact, a powerful pink aura erupted from her fist. Bam! Her punch was surprisingly strong, sending the vampire flying into a wall. The vampire's glowing eyes watched from the shadows as Suha closed her eyes, overwhelmed. With a smack, a sharp claw suddenly grabbed her face, stopping her in her tracks. A boy with silver gray hair and golden eyes rushed past them, throwing a punch. Bam! He landed a devastating blow, sending the vampire staggering back. The silver-haired boy landed gracefully as the vampire fell heavily to the alley floor. With a whoosh, the white-haired savior, Jaka, swept Suha into his arms and leaped high into the air, flying over the city plaza. Completely bewildered, Suha stared ahead in shock, realizing she was being carried like a princess. In a brief fantasy, Jaka apologized for carrying her like a princess in his haste, while a dazed Suha happily replied that she must have been royalty in a past life. Jaka landed gently, asking if she was hurt, while the boy named John called out their names in concern. John turned anxiously, asking if Suha was okay. Still shaken, Suha clung to Jaka's shirt, confirming she was fine thanks to his timely rescue. Staggering, John stared at the defeated vampire, demanding to know why the bastard was still standing. He angrily wondered why a vampire would be wandering around a crowded place before dark. As the vampire stumbled forward, John noted that despite the shadows and clothing for cover, it was still too early. He deduced that other vampires, besides their kind, shouldn't be active until it was completely dark. Roar! The vampire let out a defiant growl, making John angrily question how this was possible. The enraged vampire bared its blood-stained fangs and growled a demand. "Give me that girl now," he roared, while a shocked Jaka held a terrified Suha. John erupted in fury, his golden eyes narrowing as he shouted in disbelief. Cheyenne, equally furious and shocked, cried out Suha's name in alarm. The hooded vampire's glowing red eyes narrowed, suspecting the attack might be a trap. Suha's eyes widened in horror as a terrible thought occurred to her. She had been their target all along. Confusion and anger flashed in John's eyes as he questioned why Suha would be their target. Whoosh! Realizing the gravity of the situation, John turned with a frown, thinking this was bad. As more hooded figures emerged from the shadows, the group found themselves surrounded in the alley. Roar! The newly appeared vampires hissed, their red eyes glinting with malice. Facing the growing horde of monsters, Jaka and Suha gasped in horror. John yelled at Jaka, ordering him to get Suha out of there immediately and find a crowded street for safety. Jaka shouted back with a determined look, indicating he understood the plan. Roar! The horde of vampires let out a collective hiss and charged at them. Whoosh! John became a blur, moving to intercept the charging monsters. Whoosh! Jaka leaped away with incredible speed, Suha screaming in his arms as they fled. Bam! He landed forcefully on a nearby rooftop. Thud! He landed heavily again as he continued to flee across the buildings. With a series of rapid footsteps, Jaka sprinted across the rooftops, the rough ride, making Suha cry out. Completely bewildered, Suha shouted, asking Jaka if he had just teleported. She recalled how he had appeared out of nowhere and whisked her away. She marveled at his incredible speed, amazed that he could run so fast while carrying her. Ugh! The intense speed made Suha feel dizzy and nauseous. She yelled for Jaka to stop, startling him mid-stride. Suha explained that she wasn't feeling well and the high-speed movement was making her sick. Sizzle, back in the alley, Solon grabbed a vampire by the neck, its face burning at his touch. Solon glared at the creature, demanding to know who sent it. He slammed the screaming vampire against a wall, interrogating it about its motives. Thump! Elsewhere, a boy with purple hair stood over several defeated vampires, noting they were low-level and barely conscious. He looked down at them, concluding there was no point in trying to talk to them. Heli arrived on the scene, immediately asking the others where Suha was. John explained that Jaka had already taken her to the plaza for safety. An angry Heli turned to Cheyenne, demanding to know how this could have happened on his watch. Guilt-ridden, Cheyenne admitted he had left for a moment to buy tickets and came back to find her gone. Heli angrily scolded Cheyenne for leaving someone unfamiliar with the area alone. Solon intervened, telling Heli to stop blaming Cheyenne, as no one could have predicted the attack. Solon continued, noting the situation wasn't simple, as a wooden stake could be seen piercing a vampire's chest. Heli stood over the slain vampire with a bloody stake in hand, grimly stating this was no coincidence. Heli's expression was dark and serious, his resolve hardened by the premeditated attack. He concluded with certainty that the vampires were specifically targeting Suha. Ugh! Upon reaching the plaza, Suha bent over, complaining of a headache, as Jaka asked if she was okay. Phew! She explained she'd never moved like that before, and he told her not to apologize. A flustered Jaka admitted he had been thoughtless and awkwardly offered to carry her on his back. Suha politely declined, saying she just needed some fresh air to recover. She sincerely thanked Jaka for his help, her gratitude catching him by surprise. Suha clarified that she wasn't just thanking him for today, but for every time he had stepped in to save her. Jaka blushed and looked away, shyly accepting her thanks. Suha then asked a question that had been on her mind. How did he know where to find her? Jaka looked at her, puzzled by the question. Suha pressed further, asking how he knew her exact location in the alley. Suha's eyes widened as a startling realization began to dawn on her. A flustered Jaka started to explain, but in the distance, a new figure with blonde hair appeared under an archway. Suha cut him off, her thoughts suddenly clicking into place, telling him to wait. The boy under the archway suddenly broke into a smile, his eyes obscured by his blonde hair. Suha recognized the mysterious figure, her eyes filled with shock. The boy's face came into view, revealing calm and captivating green eyes. A voice called out Suha's name, and she responded with a cry of joy and shock, "Chris!" Chris stood gracefully under the archway, bathed in a soft light. Suha stared ahead, her expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. Whoosh! Jaka called out Chris's name, rushing toward the archway with an anxious Suha. As Suha ran, Heli called out, asking if she was okay, and she yelled Heli's name in response. With a series of frantic footsteps, Suha ran desperately while Heli promised to come get her. A young man with black hair and golden eyes turned around, alerted by the commotion. Screech! Suha skidded to a halt in front of the young man, calling out his name in surprise. Khan greeted Suha warmly, commenting that it was a surprise to see her. He asked if she was alone, and a flustered Suha struggled to answer. Thinking Chris was gone, Khan pressed on, asking if she came with others. Whoosh! Jaka suddenly appeared, standing protectively in front of Suha and confronting Khan. Khan looked past Jaka, pointedly asking if it was just the two of them. Jaka coldly told Khan it was none of his business, despite Suha trying to explain that others were there too. Another group arrived, and a boy excitedly called out to Khan, suggesting a boat race. The boy in a baseball cap turned and greeted Suha with a bright smile. Jaka glared protectively, interrupting the cheerful greeting with his intimidating presence. Suha's other friends rushed to the scene, one of them calling out their names, while Suha recognized Cheyenne. Cheyenne looked on with a confused expression, clearly not understanding the tense situation. Khan and his friends watched the newcomers, and he wondered why they were all here. As Heli approached to greet Suha, she flinched slightly, calling out his name. Heli smiled gently, apologizing for being late and admitting he was worried. Suha reassured him that she was fine, explaining that the others had saved her. Khan sharply questioned why Heli was asking about Suha's well-being. Suha answered for Heli, quickly explaining that she had just encountered a vampire. Khan's expression turned to utter shock as he yelled, "What? A vampire?" His friends also expressed their disbelief, questioning how a vampire could be out in broad daylight. John coldly informed them the problem had been taken care of. Khan stared resentfully at her friends, claiming Suha wouldn't have been in danger if she were with them. Provoked by the accusation, John bared his teeth and started to retort. "Grab!" A red-haired boy held Jimin back, telling him to calm down. Khan warned Suha not to associate with her friends, claiming it was for her own good. The boy in the cap agreed, instead inviting Suha to hang out with them next weekend. Cheyenne immediately grabbed Suha's shoulder, declaring she already had plans with them, much to Suha's confusion. The boy in the cap retorted that they would see her the week after then. Cheyenne smugly announced that Suha would always be with them, forever. The two descended into a childish argument, trading insults. Roar! Khan and the red-haired boy were forced to hold back their bickering friends, who were now depicted as a feuding cat and dog. Cheyenne invited Suha to their upcoming birthday party, and she happily promised she wouldn't miss it for the world. The boy in the cap immediately accused Cheyenne of making up the party on the spot. Cheyenne childishly dared him to come to the party for proof. One of Khan's friends angrily grabbed the boy, shouting that there was no way they were going to his birthday. However, at Suha's sweet invitation, they instantly changed their minds, eagerly asking for details. The scene shifts to a grand, brightly lit manor against the city skyline. At night, the scene moves inside the manor, focusing on an ornate wooden door in a quiet hallway. Then, Suha is seen sleeping peacefully in bed, a faint, mysterious blue light glowing at her feet. In her sleep, Suha recalled the boy she saw at the plaza. She imagined that if her friend Chris were still alive, he would have looked exactly like him. A painful memory surfaced, Chris's body lying in a coffin, a wooden stake through his chest. She shook the thought away, trying to convince herself it was just someone who looked like him. Despite her denial, Suha blushed and sweated in her dream, clearly sleeping restlessly. A doubtful voice cried out, "No way, that can't be true." Suha tossed and turned in her sleep, tormented by the possibility, wondering if Chris had been alive all this time. She cried, questioning why he never looked for her and why he had suddenly disappeared again. her thoughts suddenly shifted, feeling that none of those questions mattered anymore. The dreamscape changed to a dark beach where Chris stood alone, gazing at the sea. As he turned his head, an ethereal voice called his name in disbelief. Suha appeared in the dream, desperately calling out to Chris, asking if he remembered her. She stood on the shore, reminding him they were good friends who used to play together every day. Chris listened, his expression serene. Elusive, overwhelmed with emotion, Suha cried out that he had told her he trusted her. The two stood on the shimmering shore as Chris gave her a faint smile. Waking up, Suha gasped awake, tears streaming down her face. She lay in bed, dazed and emotional, wondering if it was just another vivid dream. She cried, telling herself it had to be a dream because he couldn't have been there. Despite knowing it was a dream, she got out of bed with determination. She ran outside, accepting that this was all a dream and deciding to go along with it. Whoosh, whoosh, she ran through the courtyard toward a dock full of boats. Panting, she wondered why the night was so dark when a full moon was forecasted. Flinch, a sinister howl from the distance made her jump. Awoo. Awoo. She saw the silhouette of a howling wolf, anxiously wondering if they were stray dogs. Roar. 3 giant wolves with glowing red eyes emerged from the shadows, growling at her. Terrified, Suha realized the creatures were too large to be dogs. Suddenly, a transformed Khan appeared before her, eyes glowing and fangs bared, and she called out his name. Khan looked feral, with sharp claws and wild hair, standing before a stunned Suha on the dock. Khan blushed, asking Suha why she was out so late, and looked down, noticing her pajamas. Suha looked at him, confused, feeling that something was very off about him. She stared at his glowing eyes and sharp teeth, realizing he didn't look like the Khan she knew. Eye contact. As their eyes met, Suha dismissed her concerns, blaming her imagination on the late hour. Suha nervously apologized for being dressed so casually, but a flustered Khan quickly told her not to worry, insisting that he understood. Khan shyly asked what brought her to the beach so late. Suha hesitated and looked away, trying to come up with an answer. She claimed she was on a whim to see the night beach, using it as an excuse for her pajamas. Khan seemed worried, asking why she was out alone so late, especially when it was pitch black. Suha explained she came because she thought there would be a full moon. Khan explained that a planetary alignment had caused a lunar eclipse, hiding the moon in Earth's shadow. She looked up in wonder as he told her it was a very special night. Staring at the blood moon, Suha realized it was the first time she had ever seen one. She watched in awe, finally understanding she was witnessing a lunar eclipse. Khan blushed as he watched her reaction. Suha turned to the blushing Khan, ready to ask another question. She asked what he was doing out so late, and he seemed hesitant. Khan claimed he was just out to see the eclipse, but Suha didn't seem convinced by his answer. Suha asked if he came alone and where his friends were. A blushing Khan confirmed he was alone, hesitantly starting to explain where the others were. Awoo. He claimed his friends were all asleep, letting out a soft howl. Khan nervously got Suha's attention, timidly asking if she would mind something. He shyly asked if he could walk her back to her room after she was done watching. He explained his concern, reminding her about the vampire encounter from earlier that day. Whisper. He leaned in to admit he also just wanted to be with her, and she happily thanked him. Suha smiled and confessed she was actually a little scared because of the vampire incident. She then added stray dogs to her list of fears, leaving Khan completely dumbfounded. Khan questioned her about the stray dog she mentioned, and she simply replied, Mitchum. Suha explained with a worried expression that she had seen a pack of huge stray dogs on her way to the dock. She elaborated that they were as big as wolves, though she dismissed the idea, which made a nervous Khan stammer. Suha expressed her concern, hoping the big dogs wouldn't hurt anyone. Khan defensively shouted that they would never do that, specifically emphasizing those wolves. Suha immediately questioned his wording, asking if he knew the wolves, causing him to nervously correct himself. Head scratch. Khan tried to recover, nervously suggesting that wolves might be nicer than she thought. Suha smiled brightly, readily agreeing that wolves were indeed cool. An ecstatic Khan asked if she really liked wolves, but Suha clarified that she only liked watching them on TV. Whimper. She added that real-life wolves were scary, and his excitement instantly deflated. The scene shifts to a grand academy building on a sunny day. Inside a massive, multi-story library, students are everywhere, browsing the shelves in the sunlight. Suha looked up when she heard her name called. Turning around, she saw Heli greeting her with a friendly wave and a warm smile. Heli approached, and asked if she was at the library to borrow a book. Suha cheerfully confirmed and asked what he was there for. Heli smiled, explaining he was returning a book he had just finished. Curious, Suha asked what the book was about. Heli paused, considering his answer. He showed her the book, explaining that it covered ancient myths passed down through generations. He specifically mentioned that it included stories about vampires and werewolves. Suha's eyes widened in surprise at the mention of vampires and werewolves. Heli elaborated that they were known as sworn enemies, which is why they often appeared in the same stories. Suha listened intently, absorbing his explanation. Suha cheerfully recalled the classic definition of a werewolf, a person who transforms under a full moon. Heli confirmed her understanding with a gentle smile. A thought suddenly struck Suha, and her expression turned serious and curious. She asked Heli what happens to werewolves during a lunar eclipse, wondering if they are unable to transform. Heli admitted he wasn't sure, but began to share a specific legend he had heard about lunar eclipses. Her eyes widened in anticipation as he revealed that during a lunar eclipse, a werewolf falls in love. He concluded the legend by saying a werewolf will fall in love with the first woman they see during the eclipse. Heli's gaze deepened as he added, for the rest of their lives, they will only love that one person. He finished, leaving a flustered Suha blushing. A shy Suha called the legend romantic, but also pointed out a potential problem. Heli smiled knowingly, pointing out that since lunar eclipses are rare, werewolves must not fall in love very often. A blushing Suha agreed his logic made sense. The conversation reminded her, and she excitedly mentioned that she had just seen a lunar eclipse recently. Heli's expression turned to one of keen interest as he asked where she saw it. Suha became flustered as she explained the situation. She confessed that on the night everyone was at the plaza, she had gone back out alone. Heli's expression grew serious as he asked if Suha had gone to the plaza alone and if anything had happened. A flustered Suha denied anything unusual, lying that she just wanted to see the night beach. Heli accepted her excuse as she explained she had been expecting to see a full moon. She added that the night was unusually dark, setting up her explanation. Suha finished her story, revealing it was because of the lunar eclipse. Her expression remained bright and cheerful as she finished explaining to Heli. Suha revealed she met someone there, which made Heli's face darken with sudden tension. Standing in the library hall, Heli connected the dots and asked if she had met Khan during the lunar eclipse. Heli stared at her intently, a bead of sweat running down his face as he awaited her answer. Suha stammered a confirmation, confused by his sudden seriousness. Heli quickly regained his composure, smiling to brush off her concern and asking to join her next time. Suha sensed his brief displeasure, wondering if he was upset that she had met Khan. Heli laughed it off, saying he also liked the night beach, and she hesitantly agreed. Suha silently wondered why Heli's friends and Khan's friends seemed to have such a bad relationship. She speculated their rivalry stemmed from competing for the Nightball Championship title every year. Nod. She concluded the upcoming game must be why they disliked each other so much. Changing the subject, Heli kindly asked how Suha was adjusting to school and if she needed any help. He offered his full, unconditional support, encouraging her to let him know if she needed anything at all. Suha cheerfully assured him that everything was going well. She blushed and shyly admitted that she was actually enjoying her new school life. Beaming with genuine happiness, she declared it was the first time she had ever liked school. Heli smiled gently, telling her there was no need to thank him and that he was just glad she was happy. Suha began to explain how he had helped her make friends so quickly. Before she could finish, a red-haired student named Gino excitedly approached, calling her name. Turn. Suha turned around, her face lighting up with joy as she happily greeted Gino. Gino grinned, revealing his fangs, and asked if she and Heli were at the library to borrow books. Suha clarified that she was there to borrow a book, while Heli was returning one. She turned to Gino's friends who had just arrived and asked if they were also there to borrow books. A student with silver-white hair named Yin struck a dramatic pose, claiming he loved to read in his spare time. The bespectacled boy, Cheyenne, held up a textbook, declaring his newfound interest in quantum mechanics. John called out his friend's lies, telling Cheyenne to stop and pointing out that Noah was holding his book upside down. Gino explained to a confused Suha that only Helly actually read, while John defended himself by saying he had read 3 sentences. Gino curiously asked what she and Helly were talking about before they arrived. Suha explained that Helly was telling her about the book he just finished, Ancient Myths. She added excitedly that it also included stories about werewolves and vampires. Gino's cheerful expression vanished as he seriously repeated the word werewolves. Suha eagerly confirmed and began to recount the legend Helly had shared with her. She explained that on the night of a lunar eclipse, a werewolf falls in love with the first person they see and loves them forever. Suha gushed, declaring the legend to be both magical and incredibly romantic. In stark contrast to her excitement, Helly's friends stared at her blankly, unimpressed. Turnhead, Cheyenne mockingly scoffed at the idea, dismissing werewolves as nothing more than mutts. John chimed in, complaining that werewolves would get fur everywhere. A white-haired student sneered that werewolves were probably less than 10 human, and Noah nodded in agreement. A blue-haired student bluntly declared that werewolves were simply idiots. He stammered as he elaborated on his disdain, calling them uncivilized, simple-minded, and pathetic half-breeds. Gino laughed, trying to lighten the mood by reminding his friends that Suha found them romantic. The blue-haired student scoffed at love at first sight, calling it something only fools would do. He began to praise his own kind, asserting that vampires were more civilized and much more intelligent. Suha cut him off, flatly stating that vampires don't have emotions like love, leaving the group speechless. Suha declared angrily that a vampire could never have a warm heart. Just like humans, she concluded they were incapable of understanding love, which stunned the blue-haired student. She shouted with intense fury that vampires were nothing but cruel, cold-hearted monsters. As her words resonated, one of the friends asserted that werewolves were much better than vampires. John was completely shocked as he watched the firm conviction behind Suha's angry outburst. Surrounded by the stunned boys, Suha let out a final, pained cry. Vampires are the worst. After her declaration, an awkward silence fell over the group, and everyone stared at Suha. Helly watched her, his expression a mixture of surprise and contemplation. As her anger subsided, Suha was suddenly overcome with embarrassment at her own outburst. Suha bowed her head and apologized, but Gino quickly reassured her, admitting they had started it. Still bowing, she mumbled an explanation that she just hated vampires so much. Gino tried to comfort her, saying they understood how she felt. Helly added with a calm smile that everyone hated vampires anyway. At Helly's casual statement, a look of pure shock and panic crossed Noah's face. Out of Suha's sight, Helly clutched a letter with a red wax seal behind his back. The scene shifts to a serene night view of the Academy building. The camera settles on a wooden door in a quiet dormitory hallway. Knock, knock. A sharp rap on the door broke her solitude. Startled from her thoughts, Suha looked up, wondering who it could be. With a creak, she opened the door, surprised to find Helly standing outside. Helly greeted her with a gentle smile, asking if she had a moment to talk. A little flustered, Suha nervously agreed to let him in. Once inside, Helly began to apologize for their earlier conversation. Sitting across from her, Helly told her not to worry and acknowledged that she must really despise vampires. He smiled kindly, saying he understood the pain she went through being mistaken for one. Touched, Suha thanked him, but admitted there was a bigger reason for her hatred. Her expression turned serious as she prepared to reveal the true source of her pain. Surprised by the shift in her tone, Helly asked her what she meant. With pain in her eyes, she began to explain the real reason she despised vampires. With hatred in her voice, Suha revealed that a vampire had killed someone named Chris. Helly's eyes widened as he repeated the name Chris in disbelief. Clenching her fists, Suha explained that Chris was her only childhood friend. Lost in a painful memory, she recalled how he was the only friend she ever had. She recounted how Chris was the only one who trusted her when everyone else bullied her. Helly listened intently as she explained it was Chris's way of showing he knew she wasn't a monster. Suha confessed that, at the time, he had more faith in her than she had in herself. As she reminisced, the plot took a dark turn. But in a horrific flashback, she revealed that a vampire had killed Chris showing him lying in a coffin. Overwhelmed by the resurfacing grief, she silently gritted her teeth against the pain. Through her tears, she asked Helly how she could ever like vampires after what had happened. Sobbing, she wondered if she could ever make a friend like Chris again. Helly listened to her tragic story, his expression somber and unreadable. Helly's voice cut through her tearful thoughts. It made her look up. Echoing the words of her departed friend, Helly calmly asked, "Do you want to bite my neck?" He called her name softly, a gentle smile on his lips. Suha's eyes widened in shock, her face flushing bright red. "What?" A shriek of utter disbelief erupted from behind her bedroom door. Mortified, Suha vehemently rejected Helly's offer, asking how she could possibly do such a thing. She hastily clarified that her refusal wasn't personal. Helly smiled gently, reminding her that she and Chris were just kids back then. Suha argued, waving her arms, that they were grown-ups now, so it was completely different. He calmly asked who cares, leaving her sweating and flustered. With a sly smile, Helly pulled down his collar, inviting her to bite his neck. Suha shrieked, overwhelmed by the awkward and bizarre situation. Helly, with a knowing smile, began his explanation. He told her the offer was his way of showing that he trusted her completely. Stunned in his silence, Suha stared at him with wide eyes. As understanding dawned on her, Suha looked up to see Helly gazing at her, his golden eyes filled with determination and seriousness. Suha blushed and nervously turned the tables, asking, "What about you, Helly?" In a moment of flustered confidence, she asked if he would bite her neck. Caught completely off guard, all Helly could manage was a confused "huh?" Suha celebrated her small victory, pointing out that he was just as embarrassed. She clarified with a smile that her point was about the deep trust she shared with her dear friend. Her expression softened with memory as she called Chris her dearest childhood friend, but her eyes hardened as she asked how she could possibly not hate vampires. Helly listened intently, his expression somber and unreadable. Suha revealed a key reason for her transfer to this academy. She admitted she came specifically for the school's library. She hoped its vast collection held the secret to exterminating vampires. With cold fury, she declared that she wanted to avenge Chris. She recalled seeing a vampire for the first time, flashing back to a monstrous figure in a plaza. The memory plunged her back into the pure terror she felt that night. She described how she had been completely frozen by the creature's presence. A flashback showed her younger self collapsing to the ground, cementing her belief that vampires were monsters. Helly lowered his head, listening to her painful story with a grave expression. He looked up with a hint of an understanding smile and simply said, "I see." The heavy atmosphere broken, Suha brightly asked Helly why he had come to her room. Helly hesitated, looking away nervously as he began to explain. The scene shifts to a magnificent night view of the Grand Academy building. Elsewhere, Noah pouted with an expression of extreme dejection. Looking at the sullen Noah, Gino asked if he was down because of what Suha had said. Gino tried to cheer him up with a laugh, reminding him that Suha didn't know their true identities. Noah remained silent, still looking downcast and troubled. He quietly wondered aloud what would happen if Suha ever found out their secret. He looked to his friends and asked if she would be disappointed in them. John's expression was filled with concern, and a white-haired student shared a worried look. A purple-haired student looked down, seemingly saddened by the thought as well. The blue-haired student scoffed, coldly asking who cared if they disappointed her. He reminded them that he had warned them to stay away from her, insisting they should only associate with each other. Noah defiantly puffed out his cheeks, declaring he wanted to hang out with Suha. The white-haired student wondered aloud why Suha hated vampires so intensely. The blue-haired student countered that it was only natural for humans to hate them. The purple-haired student quietly interjected that they didn't actually harm humans. The blue-haired student shot back that to humans, all vampires were the same, and no one would believe they were different. Gino cheerfully agreed, joking that their only option was to kill all the other vampires. Noah looked up seriously, suggesting their only other option was to tell Suha. Suha watched in shock as the blue-haired student, Solon, was tied to a stake, shouting that he was a vampire, which Noah confirmed. Solon impatiently told them to get on with it, as Gino approached the pyre with a lit torch. Suha threw the burning torch at Solon, shouting for the evil vampire to die, while Yin prayed and another friend cried. John dramatically bid farewell to Solon, vowing his sacrifice would be remembered forever. Solon screamed in fury, protesting his friend's betrayal. He angrily questioned why Noah had gathered the firewood and why Gino had lit the fire, but they sheepishly admitted they got carried away. Yin accused Solon of being selfish for refusing to be sacrificed, to which Solon retorted that he should do it himself. Heli intervened to stop the charade, announcing their sacrifice plan was now Plan B. Solon, with a look of utter disbelief, shrieked, asking how sacrificing him could possibly be a backup plan. Heli stated gravely that their top priority must be to keep their identities a secret. A student with wavy white hair agreed, adding that they must also refrain from using their powers. Noah worried about what would happen if people found out about them. He voiced his fear of being hunted again, reminding them how hard it was to escape the orphanage. Solon listened, his expression grim and serious, his heterochromatic eyes filled with resolve. Gino confidently reassured everyone that even if Suha found out their secret, she wouldn't tell anyone. Solon turned to confront Gino, demanding to know what made him so sure. His face darkened with a painful memory, revealing a hint of fangs as he looked down. A flashback began, showing a young girl curiously asking a group of children who they were. She asked if the group of ragged boys had run away from the orphanage, outside a warehouse late at night. She assured them that they could trust her. Her trust shattered when she discovered the boys devouring a bird, their eyes glowing red and faces smeared with blood. She gasped, her face a mask of absolute horror. Alerted by her scream, a group of armed hunters prepared to move out, vowing to kill the vampires. The young boys fled for their lives through the dark forest. A young and bloodied Solon struggled onward, tears streaming down his face as he ran. A dark-haired boy shouted for them to stop, as they had run into a dead end. The silhouette of a mysterious woman with glasses appeared before the cornered children. The woman scolded them, reminding them she had warned it was dangerous to leave the orphanage. She instructed them to return to a place called Vanfield House. Back in the present, Solon's expression softened, a faint, melancholy smile on his face. He looked at his friends, reminding them that in the end, they only had each other. The scene shifts to Heli holding a formal invitation sealed with red wax. Back in her room, Suha excitedly held the invitation as Heli formally invited her to their birthday celebration. Suha enthusiastically accepted, then curiously asked whose birthday it was. Heli revealed with a gentle smile that the birthday celebration was for all of them. He explained that since none of them knew their real birthdays, they celebrated together. Suha looked surprised, beginning to understand the deeper meaning behind the invitation. Heli revealed that the day they celebrated was the anniversary of their escape from the orphanage. He formally declared that the day they ran away was the day all 7 of them share a birthday. The scene shifts to a stunning, sunlit mansion nestled in a vibrant forest. Suha arrived at the mansion, rendered speechless by its breathtaking beauty. Heli and John greeted her outside, thanking her for coming all this way. Suha was thrilled, amazed that such a wonderful mansion was hidden in the woods. John proudly claimed he built it, but Heli quickly corrected him, saying they were lucky enough to inherit it. Heli explained that after escaping the orphanage, they found shelter there thanks to a longtime benefactor. Suha was amazed to learn that their benefactor had left them the entire mansion in their will. As Heli explained, they only came on weekends. John's joke about gardening was quickly dismissed. A voice called her name, and Suha turned around with a bright, cheerful smile. The other 4 boys greeted her, and she recognized them as Khan, Tehale, Najak, and Enzi. Suha beamed, telling everyone it was great to see them. One of the boys teased that the feeling wasn't mutual. A boy with black hair and white streaks blushed, stammering as he asked Suha how she'd been. A blonde boy popped up from behind her, playfully shouting that their invitation was just a prank. Najak joined the teasing, bluntly asking why she bothered being born into an already crowded world. Suha laughed off their jokes and enthusiastically led the way inside. Inside the mansion, a grand, lively birthday party was in full swing. Amid the crowd, Suha and Khan stood with drinks, sharing a slightly awkward moment. Khan leaned in a little closer, blushing as he shyly confessed to Suha that he had missed her. Suha smiled brightly, explaining that while they had been texting, it had indeed been a while since they'd seen each other. Enzi, overhearing their conversation, glared in shock, learning that Khan had been texting Suha. He stormed up to Khan, angrily demanding to know what kind of messages he'd been sending. Tajda. Suha diffused the tension by showing a picture of a cute cat, explaining that Khan sent her animal pictures every day. Ha! Enzi's anger dissipated as he demanded the cute pictures too, and Suha agreed to send them, much to Khan's annoyance. Suha happily mentioned that she and Khan had bonded over their shared love for animals. Whoosh! The blonde boy cut in, laughing that it wasn't that Khan liked animals, but that he was an animal himself. Suha nodded brightly in confirmation, saying she did indeed like wolves. Khan was emotional, staring at her while blushing and sweating profusely. Suha excitedly listed her favorite animals, starting with cats and followed by a series of herbivores. The other boys reacted to her list of potential prey with a mix of wild laughter and pure horror. Suha clapped her hands, her face lighting up as she suddenly remembered she had brought gifts for everyone. She proudly presented her gift, a vampire-repelling kit, complete with crosses, garlic, and holy water. The boys stared, pale and horrified, muttering in disbelief. Oblivious, Suha cheerfully explained that she wanted them to stay safe from harm. Tahel forced a smile and thanked her, while others in the background comically collapsed from shock. The others chimed in with strained enthusiasm, praising her thoughtful gift as just what they needed. The blonde boy quickly changed the subject, demanding to know who else brought him a present. As a joke, his friends presented him with rocks and grass, which Suha found amusing. Heli approached with a serious expression, offering a handful of dirt as a gift. Suha then noticed a beautifully wrapped gift in Heli's hands and asked who it was for. Heli blushed and turned away, shyly presenting the gift to a very surprised Suha. Shocked and flustered, Suha asked why he was giving her a gift. He looked away nervously, stammering just because and encouraging her to open it. Opening the box, she found a framed photo of adorable sleeping wolf pups, exclaiming how cute they were. She thanked a blushing Khan, calling it the cutest picture she'd ever seen. He shyly looked down, clearly relieved and happy that she liked his gift. As she admired the photo, Suha smiled and commented that one of the cute little wolves looked just like him. The scene shifts to outside the mansion as the sun begins to set. Suha said her goodbyes to Heli, telling him she had a great time at the party. She curiously asked if he and everyone else were staying at the mansion for the night. Heli confirmed with a mischievous smile that they were staying to clean up. Suha offered to help, but he gently refused, telling her to get home safely. The rest of the boys waved her off, and she turned to leave, telling Heli she'd see him at school. Suha joined the others, and together they left the mansion, heading into the darkening forest. She suddenly gasped, hit by the abrupt realization that she had left Khan's framed picture behind. She remembered that Cheyenne had borrowed the photo earlier and never given it back. She turned and told the others she needed to go back, politely refusing their offers to accompany her. Waving goodbye, she told them not to wait for her and ran back toward the mansion alone. She sprinted through the forest, determined to retrieve the thoughtful, almost forgotten gift. She thought with focus that she had to get the picture quickly before the sun set completely. Suha arrived back at the mansion, out of breath, pushing the door open and announcing she forgot her picture. She froze at the sight of the messy, empty party room, feeling a sense of confusion. Stepping inside, she wondered if they hadn't cleaned up yet or were just taking a break. An unsettling silence filled the air as she nervously wondered where everyone had gone. Her eyes landed on a closed door with a sliver of light peeking through, guessing they must be inside. With a creak, she pushed the door open, calling out tentatively to see if they were all in there. She was met with a horrific sight, the 7 boys, with glowing red eyes and blood-smeared faces, feasting on a large snake. Sua's face contorted in pure horror, her pupils shrinking in absolute shock. A dismembered, bloody snake carcass lay next to a shattered glass. A red-haired boy panted heavily, baring his fangs as he clutched the mangled snake. John glared with feral intensity, his face and hands stained with blood. Cheyenne, with a crazed look in his eyes, clutched a bloody glass, lost in the frenzy. Solon gasped for air, holding a glass of blood, his expression dazed and flushed. Another purple-haired boy panted, his eyes glowing as he clutched a snake. His eyes widened in realization as he let out a soft "oh." Heli stared directly at her, his vampiric nature exposed as he whispered her name. Suha stumbled back from the horrific scene, speechless with shock. The boys looked up from a floor in a panic, one of them calling out her name. Heli desperately pleaded with her to wait, his face a mask of desperation. In disbelief and terror, all Suha could stammer was that it couldn't be possible. Heli shouted that he could explain everything, his monstrous fangs on full display. Suha was frozen in fear, her mind unable to process the horror before her. She lost her footing and tumbled down a short flight of stairs. Heli frantically called her name, begging her to wait as she fell, a voice echoing in her mind, asking for a chance to explain. Suha fled with a terrified scream, shouting at them to stop as they sent her telepathic messages. Heli stood in frustration, blood splattered on his face, watching her run away. A single tear traced a path down his blood-stained cheek. Solon watched with a pained and resigned expression, as if he knew this would happen all along. The world became a blur as she ran for her life. Suha desperately sprinted through the darkening forest, fleeing the mansion. Gasping for breath, she frantically tried to make sense of the horrific scene she had just witnessed. The image of her friends, faces smeared with blood and fangs bared, flashed in her mind, confirming her worst fears. Her mind raced, replaying Heli's kind and gentle smile. She remembered Cheyenne's bright smile and playful peace sign. She remembered the charm of Yan's confident wink. Solon's cool and serious gaze also came to mind. In a moment of clarity, she saw them all, realizing they were all vampires. She finally understood that their true nature was the source of their amazing abilities. She recalled their superhuman strength and agility, which now had a terrifying explanation. A single tear escaped her eye as the weight of the truth hit her. A memory surfaced of a man questioning why they were after him without any proof. Her thoughts spiraled as she remembered asking someone to bite her neck. In a flashback, she recalled shyly asking a stunned Heli if she could bite him. All he could respond with was a confused huh? His expression had shifted to one of silent horror at her innocent request. Her mind struggled to connect the dots, realizing why he had reacted that way. She cried as she ran, remembering how she had told them she trusted them completely. Her heart broke as she screamed in anguish, feeling utterly betrayed by her friends. A painful memory surfaced of her with a young boy named Chris, recalling how she had believed she had finally found true friends who trusted her. In a heartbreaking flashback, Suha recalled her naive belief that she had finally met people with whom she could share her secrets. The memory continued, showing her joy at thinking she was finally enjoying school for the first time. Sobi. Back in the present, she collapsed in the forest, crying out that they had all lied to her. Russell. As she cried into her hands, she flinched at a sudden sound from the darkness around her. She looked up in fear at an approaching dark figure, wondering if Heli had come back for her. She screamed at the figure to stop following her, shouting that she hated vampires. The figure revealed itself to be a terrifying, masked vampire with glowing red eyes and a sinister fang smile. Suha froze, her face a mask of pure terror, as she came face to face with a true monster. The scene briefly cuts back to the stately mansion, now quiet under the night sky. Inside, surrounded by the bloody aftermath, the 7 boys remained, with Heli standing ready to act. His red eyes burned with determination as he made a decision. Despite his own vampiric state, Heli declared that he needed to go talk to Suha. John grabbed his ankle to stop him, demanding to know what he could possibly say to her. An enraged Yin now shouted at Heli, asking if he really thought Suha would believe any excuse after what she had seen. The rest of the boys watched with concern as Heli stood firm, determined to go after her. Enzi panicked, desperately asking Heli what they were going to do now that their secret was out. John's face was contorted in a fanged snarl of anger and despair at their situation. He lamented that everyone at school would find out, forcing them to run and wander again, just like always. Cheyenne anxiously wondered if Suha would actually tell anyone their secret. Yen snarled, remembering how Suha had made it clear she hated vampires more than anything. He argued that as a classmate, she would never let them be now that she knew what they were. Najak spoke up, insisting that despite everything, they should at least try to talk to her. Tahale agreed, suggesting Heli try to reach her telepathically. Heli looked down, worried that using his telepathic powers would only scare her more. Solon ordered a boy named Jaka to find Suha's location, which he immediately did. Jaka touched his temples to concentrate, noting that Suha's presence was strong. His eyes widened in shock at what he sensed. He stumbled back in confusion, asking what was going on, realizing there were other presences. The boys stared in horror as Jaka revealed that a large number of vampires were surrounding Suha. In the forest, Suha found herself trapped by a pack of snarling, masked monsters. She sweated, speechless with terror at the impossible situation. Hearing the news, Heli immediately prepared to bolt. Jaka continued to stammer in shock, unable to process the sudden appearance of so many other vampires. He shouted a warning, and the scene confirmed his words, showing Suha helplessly surrounded. Suha was frozen on the forest path as a circle of dark figures closed in on her. The vampires snarled viciously, their red eyes fixed on their prey. Paralyzed with fear, Suha could only let out a few terrified whimpers. Back at the mansion, Heli frantically demanded Jaka tell him where Suha was. Jaka desperately shouted and pointed, and Heli was already sprinting in her direction. He yelled at Heli to go, promising the rest of them would catch up soon. Heli ran with all his might, shouting Suha's name, his face a mask of desperation. The vampires closed in on Suha, and she weakly pleaded for them to stop. One of the monsters lunged, swiping at her with its claws. Suha screamed as the monster attacked. She twisted away and bolted through the pack, making a desperate attempt to escape. She ran for her life, each breath coming in ragged gasps. The vampires gave chase, closing the distance with ease. Her escape was cut short as a vampire's bloody hand grabbed her shoulder from behind. A blur of motion streaked across the screen. An unseen savior intervened, sending the vampire attacking Suha flying with incredible force. The savior caught Suha to steady her, and she let out a grunt from the abrupt stop. He sent the attacking vampire flying with a powerful, glowing kick. Her savior was revealed to be a boy in a school uniform, turning to face his opponents. He landed a heavy punch squarely on a vampire's jaw. With a determined roar, he followed through with a powerful follow-up. He turned just in time to see more masked vampires ominously surrounding him. He was caught off guard as he was grabbed by the neck, letting out a choke sound. The monster's grip tightened, cutting off his air. He struggled desperately against the suffocating hold, letting out a pained grunt. As his vision blurred, he desperately tried to find someone to save him, a memory flashing through his mind of a young man with a cross earring and a gentle smile. The memory twisted into a horrifying vision. The same man, now a blood-soaked vampire with glowing red eyes. Back in reality, he continued to fight for his life in the vampire's chokehold. He let out a desperate telepathic scream, calling for help from someone named Khan. The mental cry reached the other boys, and Heli shouted Suha's name in alarm. The boy was pinned hard against a tree, choking as the monster closed in for the kill. The vampire let out a low growl, its single glowing red eye fixed on its prey. With a splat, in a flash, the monster's head exploded in a spray of blood. Suha watched, stunned, as the headless creature stood for a moment before collapsing. Splattered with blood, she stared wide-eyed in horror at the gruesome scene. A new figure cut a bloody path through the remaining vampires with astonishing speed. Heli, fangs bared and covered in blood, landed before her, anxiously asking if she was okay. Too terrified to speak coherently, Suha could only tremble and whisper his name. When he took a step closer to comfort her, she flinched and pulled away. Heli began to explain that they weren't what she thought, but she cut him off with a question. With tears in her eyes, she asked if he was trying to say that none of them were vampires. Heli's pained silence and vampiric features gave her the devastating answer. She pleaded with him to tell her it was all a misunderstanding, desperate for a lie. He clenched his jaw, unable to deny the truth, his expression filled with remorse. Her face fell as her last hope was crushed by the silence. Overwhelmed by betrayal and fear, she broke down into heartbreaking sobs. In a flashback, Heli recalled asking her why she trusted him. Sobbing, Suha asked if he had questioned her trust simply because she wasn't one of them. Helly desperately denied her accusation, insisting that wasn't what he meant at all. Through her tears, she pressed, asking what else he could have meant. His voice filled with sorrow. He asked how she could trust him so easily. His question hung in the air as Suha stared, her tears reflecting the painful truth. Tears welled in Helly's eyes as well, sharing in her heartbreak and regret. Suha turned her head away, unable to look at him any longer. Looking past him into the woods, she tearfully called out for Khan. A blond young man in a white frilly shirt emerged, calmly introducing himself as Chris. Suha looked up, her expression shifting from grief to utter shock. Helly turned his head, his face a mask of confusion at the sudden appearance of the stranger. Chris stood calmly in the clearing, an unervingly serene presence amidst the bloody aftermath. Suha stared at him, speechless, while Helly watched the unfolding mystery. When Suha finally recognized him and called out his name, Chris offered a meaningful smile. Still in disbelief, she questioned how he could be alive. A telepathic voice urgently called Helly's name, sensing the newcomer's presence. Jaka, appearing panicked, telepathically asked Helly if Chris was with Suha right now. Helly, staring at Chris, sent back a mental message asking Jaka what was wrong. Jaka desperately explained telepathically, revealing that Chris was not what he seemed. Elsewhere in the forest, John unleashed a torrent of flames, incinerating a hostile vampire. With a thud, Cheyenne delivered a bone-shattering punch, obliterating another monster in a blur. Tahale stood calmly amidst dissipating shadows, the remains of defeated enemies swirling around him. Thwack! Enzi landed a punch on a creature, angrily wondering where this horde of vampires came from. Jaka's frantic telepathic message continued, his eyes urgent as he tried to warn Helly. He warned that this incredibly powerful being, Chris, was standing right next to Suha. Jaka revealed he felt a powerful wave from Chris, one as strong as Suha's. As they faced off, a blood-splattered Helly glared furiously at the situation before him. At the scene of the slaughter, Helly watched as a tearful Suha asked the stranger if he was Chris. Overcome with emotion, Suha pressed again, her voice trembling with disbelief and hope. Chris offered a gentle, meaningful smile, confirming his identity. In tears, Suha questioned how he could be alive when she had seen him die with her own eyes. With a cryptic smile, Chris asked Suha if she remembered what happened that day. He reminded her that his last request had been for her to bite his neck. Stunned into silence, as the shocking memory surfaced, Suha gasped. Crying out his name, she threw herself into Chris's arms, hugging him tightly. She clung to him desperately, overwhelmed with emotion, trying to express how much she had missed him. Crying into his shoulder, she said she had missed him so much. Under Helly's silent gaze, Suha confessed that she hadn't stopped thinking about Chris for a single moment. She told him he was the only friend who had ever truly trusted her. Her words landed like a physical blow to Helly, his face twisting in visible heartbreak. Chris gently pushed back from the hug, apologizing for not finding her sooner. He took her hands, his expression tender as he looked into her tear-filled eyes. He confessed he had been worried she wouldn't believe he had been resurrected. Suha agreed that it wasn't something a normal person could easily believe. Chris's gaze on her intensified. He earnestly told her that he hoped she would believe him now. He leaned in closer, adding that he had been desperate to find her. Suha listened, her heart fluttering at his words. With a melancholic look, he confessed he had been searching all these years, just for her. Helly watched the intimate exchange, his features hardening with shock and despair. Suha joyfully declared that she believed Chris, insisting that nothing else mattered as long as he was alive. Chris smiled, seemingly pleased with her unwavering trust. He gently lifted her hand, his touch sending a shiver through her. He reverently brought her hand to his lips, calling her his princess, now and forever. Suha's eyes filled with happy tears. A shadow crossed Chris's eyes as his gentle expression began to shift. Helly, observing from a distance, had a look of grim realization on his face. The facade dropped, revealing sinister fangs and glowing purple eyes. Suha recoiled sharply, confused by the change in his demeanor. He cruelly tightened his grip on her hand, drawing blood and revealing his true, monstrous nature. As Helly lunged forward, Suha let out a scream of pure terror at Chris's betrayal. Heli yanked Suha behind him, furiously demanding to know what Chris was doing. Baring his fangs, Heli growled with protective rage, ordering Chris to stay away from her. Unfazed, Chris looked at him with a cold, mocking smile. He calmly advised Heli to back off, casually twisting his own hand back into place. Suha screamed Chris's name, horrified by the monster he had become. With a thud, Cheyenne appeared suddenly, blocking Chris's attack on Heli with a burst of green energy. Chris unleashed his power with an easy, vicious smile as Cheyenne struggled to hold him back. Chris caught Cheyenne's energy blast effortlessly with his bare hands. He threw Cheyenne with immense force, sending him crashing through a large tree. Suha cried out Jaka's name in horror, then demanded to know what Chris was. Chris turned to Suha with a gentle smile, telling her he was trying to save her from the vampires, gesturing to Heli and his friends now surrounding him. With a confident smirk, Chris prepared to counter the boys. With a whoosh, he lunged forward, his movements almost too fast to see. A vicious grin spread across his face as his eyes glowed an ominous purple. Thwack! He landed a solid punch squarely on Jaka's face. Jaka cried out in pain. With a triumphant smile, Chris easily deflected a simultaneous attack from Cheyenne and a flame-wreathed Enzi. He caught both of their powered fists with no effort. Enzi stared in shock at Chris, who mockingly expressed his disappointment in their strength. Tightening his grip on their fists, he grimly asked if none of them remembered him. He declared the situation was now more in his favor as dark shadows began to spread from his feet. The shadows shot across the ground like sentient tendrils. The tendrils snaked through the trees, closing in on his opponents. The dark energy wrapped around Cheyenne and Enzi, completely binding them from behind. Tehale watched helplessly as the tendrils dragged his friends towards Chris. Injured and bleeding, Tehale found himself ensnared by the shadows as well. A black tendril snaked across Chris's face as he glared with a sinister look. He turned his head to see Heli and the remaining boys rushing towards him, shouting Suha's name. One of the boys anxiously asked if Suha was all right. An enraged and bloodied Taeyong rushed in to help, demanding to know who Chris was and why he was after Suha. Chris looked back dispassionately, his purple eyes devoid of emotion. His expression twisted into a cruel, knowing smile, mocking their ignorance. With a boom, he unleashed a massive, violent explosion of purple energy that engulfed the area. In the aftermath, all the boys were scattered on the ground, unconscious. Cheyenne lay motionless on the dusty ground. The red-haired Enzi, defeated and bruised, was also down, knocked out by the powerful blast. Jaka was shown face down, completely incapacitated. The young man with the cross earrings stirred weakly, asking if everyone was okay. As he crawled, Heli's only concern was for Suha, desperately asking if she was safe. Fangs bared and eyes glowing red, the earring-wearing young man screamed Suha's name. The desperate cry for Suha echoed through the now silent and empty forest. The background blurred, indicating a swift escape from the scene. Chris carried Suha through the woods as she struggled, shouting for him to let her go. She demanded in terror to know why he was taking her. Chris calmly reiterated that he was protecting her from the vampires. Elsewhere, the young man with the earring gasped heavily, determination burning in his vampiric eyes. Suha stammered, her face a mask of confusion and fear at his words. He looked down at her, promising to take her somewhere safe. He covered her mouth, manipulating her by asking if she didn't trust her one true friend. He told her that she should repay that trust now. Suha's eyes widened in fear as the horrible truth began to dawn on her. Suddenly, the young man with the cross earring appeared, grabbing Chris's arm to stop him. His face was contorted in rage, his red eyes burning with protective fury. Chris was genuinely shocked by the powerful and unexpected intervention. A sudden flashback showed another brown-haired boy attacking Chris in an attempt to save a different young woman. The flashback focused on the determined face of the boy who had once fought Chris to protect someone else. Suha screamed a terrified plea. No, Eddie. A bloodied Heli with glowing red eyes roared for them to stop. Heli took a fighting stance, his uniform tattered and splattered with blood. A blond boy watched with wide, determined eyes. With a thud, he lunged at another boy in a blur, shielding a third person between them. In the dark forest, Suha screamed Heli's name in desperation. With a smack, a pair of hands pushed forcefully against someone's chest. Suha struggled in an unseen person's arms, screaming for Heli again. Snatch! The captor's arm was suddenly grabbed from behind. She turned frantically, telling the man called Chris to let her go. Chris held on, his expression pained as he asked why she was going to them. A sinister smile spread across his face, revealing his fangs as he asked if she had forgotten who killed him. Suha froze, her eyes wide with shock. Tears welled in her eyes as the horrifying realization began to sink in. She stared at him, defiantly declaring that he was not Chris. She tearfully demanded to know who he really was. He simply offered a gentle, unreadable smile in return. In a glowing, mystical forest clearing, a soft voice posed a question. He leaned closer to her, his eyes flashing a menacing purple as he asked who she thought he was. He opened his mouth, revealing a terrifying set of monstrous fangs. Suha stared at him, paralyzed with fear. His jaw unhinged as he lunged to attack. Snap! He bit down viciously as the blue-haired boy, Solon, intervened, much to Heli's shock. The blood-splattered and triumphant imposter glared with glowing purple eyes. Suha screamed Solon's name in terror. Solon grimaced in pain, blood trickling from his mouth as he endured the attack. He reached out, his hand transforming into a claw. He lunged forward. Solon grabbed his attacker's throat, letting out a pained cry. He tightened his grip, determined to fight back. Suha rushed towards the battle, screaming Solon's name. A powerful, arcing attack cut through the air. Thwack! The imposter delivered a devastating blow, sending both Solon and Suha flying. Suha lay unconscious on the dusty ground, thrown clear of the fight. Solon glared with pure rage, bloodied but undeterred. He bared his blood-stained teeth in a furious snarl. His grip tightened as power surged through him. A brilliant blue aura erupted around him. A blinding flash of light engulfed the area. Suha struggled to her knees. Gasping for air, she looked up with concern, calling out to ask if Solon was okay. The imposter looked up from the ground, his face splattered with blood. A massive wolf with blue fur and shimmering with energy stood over him. Suha couldn't believe her eyes. She whispered Solon's name. The transformed Solon let out a low growl, his beastly eyes locked on his enemy. He swiped with his claws to attack. With a thud, he pinned the imposter to the ground with his massive paw. Solon opened his monstrous maw, preparing for a final bite. Crunch! He bit down with savage force, ending the fight. Suha stood frozen, utterly stunned by the brutal transformation she had just witnessed. Solon, in his wolf form, roared with primal fury. The flashback continued, showing the brown-haired boy landing a heavy punch on Chris's face. A vicious, werewolf-like creature mauled a young woman on the ground. Thwack! Chris, with a bloody smile, punched the creature, knocking it off its victim. The monster hit the ground hard, defeated. The brown-haired boy screamed in terror, calling out Solon's name. Chris cried out in pain, clutching a new wound on his neck. Chris glanced back as Heli's friends rushed forward, shouting Suha's name. Annoyed, Chris declared them a nuisance, his claws glowing with purple energy. The brown-haired boy in the flashback slapped Chris's hand away, desperately shouting for him to stop. Chris glared, delivering a chilling ultimatum to the boy in his way. He threatened to knock him out and take Solon by force. The boy was terrified. As Chris attacked, the boy shielded Solon with his own body, screaming in pain. Solon's eyes were wide with horror behind his protector. The brown-haired boy, his eyes glowing red, gritted his teeth and endured the attack to protect her. With a thud, they were thrown backward, skidding across the dusty ground. Chris staggered, his neck bleeding and his body weakened. Jaka and another student observed the fight, realizing Chris was not like other vampires. A powerful surge of energy was felt. A voice commanded the werewolves to attack, and they materialized, ready for battle. Chris watched their approach with a grim, determined expression. The pack of werewolves roared and charged forward to attack him. The beasts swarmed Chris, relentlessly biting and clawing at him. Chris's eyes widened in shock as the ferocious assault continued. The werewolves slammed him violently to the ground. The flashback ended. Back in the present, Heli held a semi-conscious Suha, looking up at her saviors. Suha whispered Heli's name in disbelief. Heli's vampiric eyes flickered as he anxiously asked if she was okay. She called out to him as he ignored the gruesome wound on his back, asking again if she was hurt. He gasped from pain and exertion, but his determination was unwavering. Overwhelmed with emotion, Suha began to cry. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered Heli's name, struggling to speak. Held safely in his arms, she cried that the monster she saw wasn't the Chris she knew. As the horrible truth dawned, she sobbed that her friend had never been a vampire. Heli listened to her heartbroken words with deep sadness and understanding. He leaned over her gently, whispering that he was so sorry. He began a difficult confession, his voice filled with remorse. Suha looked up at him, tearfully offering her own apology. On the forest floor, Heli continued his heartfelt apology, apologizing for what he was. Suha gazed into his eyes, whispering his name through her tears. Heli told her she had every right to hate him for the rest of her life. He looked down at her, his expression a mix of pain and devotion. With tears in his eyes, he promised he would get her safety. Suha looked up at him, her terrified expression softening at his sincere vow. The scene shifted with a blur. Thwack! Back in the fight, Chris was swarmed by a pack of werewolves. He gasped for air, bloodied and battered but still standing. With a thud, Jaka delivered a powerful green energy kick, sending Chris stumbling back. Chris's purple eyes burned with rage as he glared at his opponent. With a whoosh, Cheyenne rushed forward, his eyes glowing gold with intense concentration. Jaka prepared to attack again, gathering crackling purple energy in his hands. Chris braced himself, ready for another assault from the vampires. Arg! A bloodied and bruised Chris glared with defiant rage. Refusing to yield, Jaka lunged forward, his face a mask of fury, pressing the attack. Chris erupted in a massive, blinding blast of energy, knocking Heli and his friends back. Chris unleashed his power with a furious growl, commanding it to shoot forward. A blinding purple light erupted, forcing the attackers to shield their eyes. In a blinding flash, the silhouette of a powerful strike hit its mark. The energy converged into a massive beam, blasting the forest floor. A blood-soaked Cheyenne gasped heavily, exhaustion and fury in his vampiric eyes. Enzi was also panting, equally battered, but determination burned in his red eyes. Jaka gasped and glared through his injuries, refusing to back down. Tehale struggled to stay on his feet, breathing heavily after the intense battle. Heli, also injured, gritted his teeth, catching his breath for the next move. The boys stood by the crater, shocked to find that Chris had vanished. Cheyenne's exhaustion turned to panic as he desperately shouted, asking if Suha was safe. The scene shifted to a quiet, moonlit spot in the forest, away from the battle. In the serene atmosphere, Suha and Heli sat side by side on a thick tree trunk. Heli watched Suha with gentle concern, his post-battle gaze softened. He leaned in a little closer, the moonlight illuminating their tired and emotional faces. Suha grew a little flustered by his proximity, her heart still racing from the ordeal. Heli gently asked Suha if she was okay and if she had been hurt during the fight. Suha looked up in surprise, caught off guard by his gentle inquiry. She quickly assured him she was fine, giving him all the credit for protecting her. She returned the concern, asking if Heli had been injured in the fight. Putting on a brave face, Heli smiled and insisted he was perfectly fine. He then added with a dark, weak chuckle that he couldn't die anyway. Suha's eyes widened in shock, the reality of his vampiric nature hitting her once again. With a heavy heart, Suha lowered her head and quietly apologized to him. Heli immediately told her not to apologize, insisting he was the one who should be sorry. He moved closer to her, sincerely apologizing for not being honest with her from the beginning. He confessed that they had been hiding their identities ever since they left the orphanage. Suha listened intently, her expression a mix of shock and dawning understanding. He admitted that it was especially hard to be honest with her. He clasped his hands, explaining that more than anyone finding out they were vampires, they were afraid of disappointing her. "I'm sorry, Suh," he said again, as she looked back at him with tears in her eyes. Suha confessed that, honestly, everything was incredibly confusing for her right now. Tears welled up as she struggled to accept the unbelievable truth that they were all vampires. Helly lowered his gaze, listening to her with a somber expression. She pressed on, asking how it happened, reminding him he said they grew up in an orphanage. She asked if they had all been bitten by another vampire, which filled Helly's expression with pain. Under the starry sky, a voice whispered an admission. I don't know. Helly looked up in anguish, confessing he had no idea how or why they became vampires. Tears filled his eyes at his inability to give her an answer. Suha looked at him, her expression softening with sympathy for his own confusion and pain. He explained that, for as long as he could remember, they had been vampires. He revealed they were raised in captivity in a grim building disguised as an orphanage. Suha's expression turned to pure horror at the dark revelation. He admitted they didn't know if they were bitten, born that way, or if someone had turned them. A single tear escaped his eye, embodying all the pain and uncertainty of his past. Helly continued his confession, explaining that unlike other vampires, they were barely affected by sunlight, crosses, or holy water. Tearfully, Suha asked how they could be sure they were vampires, acknowledging their powers but questioning their nature. Hopefully, she suggested they might not be vampires, just like her, but Helly's pained expression said it all. His face fell in a shadow as he gave the grim, certain answer, because we crave blood. Tears streamed down his face as he confessed to an innate and inescapable desire to drink blood. Suha listened in horror as he admitted they had no desire for anything else. He heartbreakingly revealed that they could even survive without any food at all. Suha was speechless, stunned by the harsh reality of his existence. Helly clutched his head in anguish, explaining they controlled their urges by drinking blood only once a year on their birthday. He clarified that they only drank the blood of recently deceased animals, swearing they had never harmed a person or tasted human blood. He drew her closer, earnestly pleading for her to believe him, saying it was a promise they made to each other. Actually, it's okay if you don't believe me. Helly looked at her with unwavering devotion, promising he would keep trying until she did. With tears in his eyes, he told her it was completely natural for her to be afraid of them. A single tear rolled down Suha's cheek as she listened to his pain confession. Mustering her courage, she asked him a direct question. Why did he come to save her? She pressed further, asking if he wasn't afraid she would blame him or expose his secret to the school. As Suha waited for an answer, Helly's voice explained that it just felt right. He gazed at her fondly, confessing that it had always felt right. A memory flashed of them standing in a grand hall with a brilliant light behind them, symbolizing a fated connection. He concluded firmly, admitting that saving her felt like his destiny. Suha reflected that, for the first time, he had found a clear answer about who he was. The realization continued against a cosmic backdrop, clarifying what kind of life he was meant to live. Standing alone in the memory, he understood the meaning of his existence. Overcome with emotion, Helly struggled to begin his final confession. He looked her directly in the eyes and declared, "I was born to protect you, and I live to save you." Immediately after the bold declaration, Helly flushed, his heart pounding from his own heartfelt words. Suha was left completely stunned and speechless by his staggering confession. Realizing what he had just said, Helly gasped. What? In a moment of panic, her eyes widened, still processing the weight of his words. Helly, face flushed with shame, stammered that he couldn't believe he had just spoken his heart out. Grasp! Suha reached out and grabbed his jacket tightly, stopping him from pulling away. She looked up at him with a gentle and trusting expression, telling him softly, "I trust you." After she spoke these words of acceptance, the forest seemed exceptionally quiet and peaceful. Overwhelmed with relief, Helly leaned forward and rested his head on her shoulder. The two sat side by side on the branch, finding a moment of quiet solace in a gentle embrace. Sua's face was flushed, her heart pounding from the intense emotions of the moment. Helly remained close to her, his own face blushing from a mix of embarrassment and deep relief. After the vulnerable confession, he held her gently, seeking comfort in her presence. He let out a heavy breath against her neck, the tension finally dissipating. Whoosh! He pulled back slightly, his determination returning to his golden eyes as they met hers. With concern in his voice, he softly asked if Suha was okay. Not. Suha offered a small smile, reassuring him that she was fine, and he had barely bitten her. Huh. Her attention shifted to him, pointing out that he was the one who didn't seem okay. With a serious gaze, Suha asked him directly if he wanted a drink or blood. Heli looked away, unable to lie yet ashamed to admit the truth. He confessed that it would be a lie to claim he didn't feel the urge at all. He looked at her with desperate sincerity, saying that losing her trust would be worse than anything. Suha's expression softened as she understood the depth of his internal conflict. He lowered his head, admitting he didn't want to disappoint her, especially after she had trusted him despite knowing he was a vampire. With his head bowed in shame, Heli told Suha he never wanted to let her down. Suha softly reassured him, saying he hadn't. Looking at him with heartfelt sincerity, Suha called his name, insisting that he had never disappointed her. She began to explain that she used to hate vampires more than anything. Suha admitted she had always thought all vampires were dangerous creatures. She reminded him with a gentle smile that he was the one who always came to her rescue. She confessed with a blush that she was incredibly happy he had saved her. Heli's eyes widened in surprise, welling up with tears as she declared that it didn't matter that he was a vampire. She didn't hate him. She looked at him gently, clarifying that she didn't hate any of them. With an apologetic look, she said she was sorry for being mean before, dismissing it as unintentional. As her thoughts drifted through the moonlit forest, she reflected that he had always been the same person she knew. He always was. She continued, saying that now that they understood each other better, she truly hoped they could become closer friends. Heli looked at her, completely stunned and moved by her acceptance. Suha looked back, offering a smile filled with hope and trust. They sat side by side on the branch, holding hands in quiet understanding. The peaceful moment was broken when a voice shouted Heli's name, prompting him to call back loudly to Jaka. Suha looked around in surprise, having heard Jaka's voice in her head, and asked if it was him. The scene cuts to Jaka anxiously asking Heli if Suha was with him, reporting that Chris had disappeared. With worry etched on his face, Jaka urgently asked about Suha's safety. Back on the branch, Heli calmly replied that Suha was fine and asked about the others. Jaka confirmed they were all okay, despite some injuries, and asked if they should come over. Heli, surprised by the question, asked if they really wanted to join them. A flustered Jaka suddenly realized he might have interrupted something important. It dawned on Jaka that Suha might not want their group showing up right now. Heli listened with a knowing smile. Not wanting to be left out, Suha eagerly called Heli's name. She misunderstood his silence, telling him to let the others know they would go to them. Suha stood up and happily called out to her friends, while Heli watched with a gentle smile. The rest of the boys rushed over, with Khan at the front, anxiously asking if Suha was okay. Beaming, Suha assured everyone she was fine, thanks to them, and asked if they were hurt. With tears in his eyes, Khan insisted they were perfectly fine and very strong. Khan turned to Suha and nervously began to explain that they were. Suha looked back at him, her expression tense but ready to listen. Her unspoken question hung in the air. Was he really a werewolf? She looked at the gathered boys and asked if they were all werewolves. Khan confirmed it was true, admitting it must be hard for her to believe. Suha was stunned, shocked by the realization that Khan was a werewolf. Khan apologized for scaring her and explained that they had been hiding their identities. He admitted they had been especially determined to keep this secret from her. A memory of Heli surfaced, recalling his own struggle to be honest with her. Khan continued his confession, his voice heavy with emotion. He explained that their greatest fear was that she would see them as monsters and be afraid. He added that they were also terrified of disappointing her by keeping such a big secret. A flashback of Heli showed his own deep fear of letting Suha down. Khan admitted they had no choice but to reveal themselves during the fight. He looked at her with firm resolve, confessing that he didn't care if she hated him for it, as long as he could protect her from harm. A memory of a desperate, blood-soaked Heli guarding her flashed before their eyes. Suha, overwhelmed with emotion, listened with tears welling in her eyes. Her thoughts echoed through the forest as she firmly decided, "I don't hate you." Standing before the two groups, Suha announced that she accepted them no matter what they were. She looked at Khan's group, clarifying that it didn't matter if they were werewolves. Suha's expression remained steady, ready to address the others. As she finished her thought, her gaze shifted to Heli's brothers. Or vampires. The vampire boys looked at her, surprised and moved by her unconditional acceptance. Two other vampires, one with unique heterochromia, were clearly touched by her words. The remaining vampires, including a white-haired boy, watched her with heartfelt emotion. She looked directly at him and called out his name. Yucca. Her gaze moved to the next boy as she called out John, Shai, and Noah. Finally, she met the gaze of a red-haired boy, who smiled back as she said the name Gino. Suha now stood before Heli, who was overcome with emotion, tears streaming down his face. Looking at the entire group of vampires, she offered them her sincere thanks. A warm and genuine smile bloomed on Suha's face. Looking at them, she confessed that she had also been hiding her own abilities and thanked them for accepting her first. The vampires listened, stunned, as she explained how happy she was when they accepted her for who she was. With renewed determination, Suha looked at them and said that this time, she stood confidently before the two united groups, ready to return their kindness. John and Noah looked at her with hopeful expressions. Heli watched with a gentle expression, while Cheyenne beamed beside him. Jaka offered a soft, understanding smile. Gino laughed cheerfully, shouting, "Of course, it's our pleasure." The two groups stood united as Suha bathed in the glow of a new dawn. The scene shifts to the sunny campus of their academy. During a sports match, a player shouts for the ball, and another passes it to Jaka. Sprint. Jaka dashes across the field, easily dodging a lunge from an opponent. He leaps high into the air, preparing to score. Whoosh. He powerfully throws the glowing ball toward the goal. Bang! The ball hits the center of the target with precision. Spin. The golden rings of the goal spin rapidly, signaling a score. Jaka celebrates the point, high-fiving his victorious teammates. The scene transitions to a quiet moment. After practice, under a clear blue sky, a voice suggests they take a break. Cheyenne wipes the sweat from his face and looks up in surprise. Suha waves cheerfully from the sidelines, calling out to him. Cheyenne excitedly asks if she came to cheer for him, and Suha confirms she came to see them. She asks how practice is going and mentions the upcoming eyeball game. Whoosh. Cheyenne casually drapes his towel over his head and confidently tells her they'll win, as always. Sparkle. He leans in close, promising to dedicate the victory to her, making Suha feel flustered. Surprised by his boldness, Suha thanks them for coming to support her. Her attention shifts when she sees Heli, and she calls his name. Heli gives her a bright, genuine smile and promises to do his best for her. Suha, rendered speechless by his heartfelt declaration, blushes. She stammers out words of encouragement, while a shy Heli says he'll try his best. After the unexpectedly intense moment, Suha tries to compose herself. Solon approaches sternly, telling her not to come around anymore in case she gets hurt. Suha just gives him a gentle, knowing smile, completely unfazed. Suha playfully asks if Solon is worried about her, making him flinch in surprise. A flustered Solon denies it, claiming she's just in the way and distracting them. She teases him with a bright smile, asking if she's really distracting him. Solon, beet red, insists that's not what he meant, gritting his teeth in frustration. Suha says his name. She asks if he can meet her after practice. She adds with a serious expression that she has something important to tell him. Solon, caught off guard by her request, is left speechless and blushing. The scene transitions to a quiet evening. Later, beneath a crescent moon, Suha meets Solon in a moonlit courtyard and greets him. Solon, with his arms crossed, impatiently asks what she wanted to say to him. Suha smiles gently, telling him he could have changed first, as she didn't mean to rush him. Solon, sweating, flusteredly yells at her to just get to the point. She stands before him and announces that she wants to thank and apologize to him. She looks at him with sincere gratitude, stressing that she especially wanted to thank him. Solon, clearly taken aback by her directness, listens as she confirms this is what she wanted to talk about. Suha explains that she heard he had hidden his abilities even from the other boys. She reveals she knows he can turn into a werewolf, leaving him shocked and speechless. She begins to apologize, thinking he was forced to transform because of her. Solon defensively cuts her off, shouting that he only transformed because Chris was annoying and it had nothing to do with her. Suha smiles warmly, insisting that doesn't change the fact that he saved her life. She then takes responsibility, admitting she was the reason Chris showed up in the first place. Solon, confused, asks what the deal is with Chris and why he tried to take her. Suha's expression darkens as she confesses she doesn't know either, revealing that Chris was her only childhood friend. She admits with a dejected look that she can't understand why he changed so much or why he would kidnap her. Solan's expression hardens as Suha confesses she's worried Chris might appear again. She looks at him sadly, admitting she's now afraid of the person who was once her best friend. Solan questions if that was really her friend, suggesting it might have just been someone who looked like him. She shakes her head, explaining that he knew a secret they shared as children, one she had never told anyone. Solan presses her, wanting to know if she's absolutely sure it was him. Suha hesitates, admitting she had told Heli the secret, but no one else. She stops abruptly, her eyes widening as a terrible thought strikes her. A flashback shows a young Chris standing alone on a beach at night. A young Suha desperately calls out to him, asking if he remembers who she is. She reminds him that they were best friends who played together every day. Crying, she clutches her chest, recalling how he told her he trusted her. Her painful memory ends with her shouting that he even let her bite his neck. The flashback of Chris ends with an incredibly unsettling, sinister smile. Another memory of Chris surfaces, showing him calmly confirming her recollection. Back in the present, a horrified Suha explains that she shared the secret with Chris in a dream. Solan, incredulous, asks how she could have told him a secret in a dream. She explains that her dreams are so vivid and realistic that she can remember touch and smell. Solan watches her with growing suspicion, asking if she's absolutely sure. Suha freezes, her own conviction beginning to waver under his intense gaze. A memory surfaces of a young Chris, saying everyone was talking about her. He recounts the rumors that she traveled between cities, avoiding the day and walking alone at night. Suha's eyes widen in horror as the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Solan repeats his question with cold intensity, asking if she's sure it was just a dream. Standing alone on a path, Suha wonders if she was sleepwalking. She quickly dismisses the idea, realizing it was impossible for her to have been sleepwalking within that time frame. Suha recalls her dream, seeing herself with Chris on a dark, dimly moonlit beach. Panicked, she insists to herself that there's no way she could have traveled that far in such a short time. Facing Solan, she argues that the chances of coincidentally meeting Chris there were almost zero. Her voice trembling, she desperately concludes that it only makes sense if it was a dream. As she spirals into confusion, Solan listens with a serious, contemplative expression. He gently tells her not to overthink it. Try to calm her down. Solan, face flushed, passionately vows that if Chris shows up again, they will protect her. He stammers, but finally shouts with conviction that they will do everything for her. Suha looks up at him, moved and warmed by his flustered yet sincere promise. She looks him straight in the eye and genuinely thanks him for his help, both then and now. A flustered Solan rejects her thanks, tells her to go to sleep, and wishes her good night. Slam! A heavy wooden door closes, ending their conversation. In the dim hallway, a figure leans against a distant wall. Solan stands with his arms crossed, still looking flustered, lost in thought. His expression darkens as he angrily questions what someone is doing. Turn! He spins around to find two figures, demanding to know why they're at the school so late. Khan watches with an annoyed expression, while Enzi greets Solan with a friendly smile. Solan glares at them furiously, demanding to know why they're there. Khan coldly tells him to mind his own business, stating their purpose is none of his concern. Enzi nervously explains they came to check on Suha, knowing some creep was stalking her. Solan becomes extremely territorial, shouting that they will take care of Suha and for the werewolves to leave. Khan scoffs that they can't trust vampires, since Suha has been put in danger by them multiple times. Enraged by the accusation, Solan prepares to lash out at Khan. Enzi gets between them, urging them to keep quiet and get along with their own kind. Solan angrily rejects the label, furiously declaring that he is a vampire. Khan retorts that the vampires who attacked them were also vampires, lumping them all together. Solan vehemently denies the comparison, shouting that his family is not like them. Khan states that to outsiders, all vampires are seen as the same, regardless of his feelings. Solan grits his teeth in frustration, struggling with the painful truth in Khan's words. He angrily asks Khan if he thinks they chose to become vampires. Solan begins to tell his story with a bitter smile, revealing they were born in an orphanage. He clarifies that he's not sure if they were born or turned there, but they have always been vampires. Khan listens intently to Solan's revelation. Solan reveals that the 7 of them were all imprisoned in an orphanage called Vanfield House. He explains that they grew up under the constant watch of a sinister director. As children, they were completely isolated and didn't even know they were vampires until many years later. Back in the present, he recounts the years they spent under constant surveillance. A flashback shows the grim orphanage as Solan says they finally escaped that miserable place. Khan looks at him with a hint of shock, processing the difficult story. Solan explains that unlike other vampires, they're not harmed by sunlight and only need blood once a year. He fiercely declares they are not responsible for the recent murders and do not drink human blood. Khan's expression softens slightly in light of Solan's passionate defense. Enzi brings the topic back to the murders, preparing to share a key detail. He reveals the victim bore a striking resemblance to Suha and shows a grim photo of her body. The disturbing image of the dead girl lingers. Enzi speculates that other vampires killed her while looking for Suha. Solan is visibly shaken by the horrific possibility. Khan also looks startled, the new information changing his perspective. He shares his own disturbing news, revealing that several werewolves have recently gone missing. Khan grimly speculates that the same enemy might be responsible for the disappearances. Enzi theorizes that their mysterious foe must have a clear purpose for doing this. Khan adds with grim certainty that Chris will come back for Suha, and they can't let her be endangered again. Solan listens to their concerns with a silent, resolute expression. Khan tells Solan it's none of his business, but Solan sharply retorts that it is. Startled by the exchange, Solan looks momentarily flustered and confused. Khan lowers his head and quietly admits that he likes Suha. A stunned Solan shouts in disbelief, completely caught off guard by the confession. Still reeling, he demands to know if Khan is serious about his feelings. Solan is left speechless, trying to process the shocking news. Khan blushes, realizing Suha is nearby, and frantically asks if she overheard. A voice from behind a nearby door timidly apologizes for eavesdropping. A mortified Suha steps out, insisting she didn't mean to listen in. Blushing furiously, she admits she couldn't help but hear his confession. A memory of the Ferris wheel at night flashes through her mind. She remembers Khan explaining that during a lunar eclipse, werewolves fall in love with the first person they see. Khan gently says her name, bringing her attention back to the present. He looks away from her, but firmly states that he meant every word he just said. Blushing, Khan explains that werewolves are fated to love only one person their entire lives. A solid wooden door separates them, his confession hanging in the air. He looks at her and declares that now he can't love anyone but her for the rest of his life. He shyly mentions the upcoming nightball game and asks if she'll cheer for him then. Suha, overwhelmed and blushing, can only look back at him in silence. Khan apologizes for dropping such a heavy confession on her so suddenly and says he's leaving. As he walks down the hall, he softly wishes Suha a good night. Footsteps. After the werewolves leave, Solan is left alone in the hallway. He stands frozen, completely stunned by what he just witnessed. Suddenly, an urgent telepathic voice calls out to him, screaming another boy's name. Yaka. A white-haired boy panics, pleading for Solan to come to their room immediately. Solan clutches his head, confused, demanding to know what's happening. A red-haired boy watches with a terrified expression. A blonde-haired boy whispers a dreaded name, Marge. A black-haired boy gravely announces that the director of their former orphanage is here. The terrible reality echoes as he and his brothers stand together, facing a shadowy figure. Marge has come. Solan sprints down the hall, his mind flashing with images of the director of Vanfield House, the grim orphanage where they had all been imprisoned for their entire lives. Even as children, they were forced to defy her. He can't believe that their former captor, Marge, has finally found them. Pant pant. Solan throws the door open, arriving out of breath. He finds all his brothers gathered in the room, already confronting the unwelcome guest. Marge looks down on the boys with a cold, calculating expression. One of the brothers glares at her, his posture tense and wary. The vampire brothers stand united, ready to face their former captor. Marge sizes them up, stating coldly that she has found where they were hiding. A silver-haired boy angrily demands to know how she found them. Marge ignores his question, announcing she has something important to tell them. The blonde-haired boy furiously rejects her, shouting that they don't want to hear it and telling her to leave. A voice laments the passage of time, noting that 120 years have passed. The black-haired boy, who seems to be the leader, calmly greets Marge, acknowledging their long separation. Marge admits she had thought he'd given up looking for them long ago. The black-haired boy points out that despite what she says, she was clearly the one looking for them. He stands before his brothers and demands to know how Marge found their location. Marge calmly corrects him, explaining that she didn't find them, but rather, she found something else. A smug smile plays on her lips as she keeps her secret. The leader, confused by her cryptic answer, widens his eyes slightly. Marge turns serious, stating that they are running out of time and must listen to her incredible story. As she pleads for them to listen, the black-haired boy coldly cuts her off, reminding her that 100 years have passed. A blue-haired boy steps forward, angrily accusing her of imprisoning them for a whole century. He furiously demands what right she has to expect them to listen after abandoning them for 120 years. Marge defensively shouts back, vehemently denying that she locked them up. She clarifies with cold intensity that she had no choice in the matter. Marge looks up at the brothers and makes a startling claim. She did it to protect them. Solon reacts with disbelief, unable to comprehend her words. A purple-haired boy demands to know what on earth she's talking about. The leader asks skeptically who or what exactly she was protecting them from. Marge prepares to reveal the truth, her expression somber. She gravely announces that the threat they face is from the original vampire. The brothers repeat her words in shock, questioning the existence of a so-called original vampire. Marge reveals she hid them to escape from Darden, the original vampire, and his sinister subordinates. With the grim Vanfield house in the background, she insists that hiding them there was her only option. She leans in urgently, trying to explain that their enemy's ultimate goal is to eliminate every last one of them, a revelation that silences the brothers. The red-haired boy demands clarification, confused about who the original vampire is and his motive for wanting them dead. Another boy with spiky silver hair has heard enough, questioning if his brothers actually believe her story. He angrily accuses Marge of lying, thinking she just wants to drag them back to the orphanage. The other silver-haired boy turns to the others, reminding them of the fact they all know. Marge addresses all of them, saying they are fundamentally different from other vampires. With a sharp gaze, she asks if they've ever stopped to wonder why that is. Her question hangs in the air, leaving the brothers to ponder and exchange glances. She explains that their nature is not the result of being turned or enhanced through experiments. Marge reveals with a sharp gaze that the truth is, in fact, the complete opposite. The blue-haired boy watches, sweat beading on his face as he processes the revelation. Marge explains that other vampires are merely incomplete beings created by the original. She points out that this imperfection is why they are aggressive, fear the sun, and are consumed by an uncontrollable bloodlust. She leans forward, insisting that the 7 of them are completely different. A brilliant golden light flashes as she declares that they are the one and only true vampire lords, the sole inheritors of an ancient power. Marge finally reveals her motive. She hid them because Darden's clan views them as their greatest threat. The boys were stunned, finally understanding the scale of the danger they were in. Marge began to tell an ancient story, explaining that the first vampire was a mortal who was turned using forbidden methods. He then began to bite people indiscriminately, turning them into his slaves. She explained that his creations were incomplete, lesser vampires, driven by an insatiable lust for blood. This desire caused their numbers to grow exponentially, turning them into a vast and ravenous army. With their overwhelming numbers, they launched an attack on the ancient kingdoms, leading to a river of blood. Marge looked at them with a grim sense of fate, declaring that today, only the 7 of them and herself were the last surviving vampire lords. She repeated that this was why she had hidden them, hoping they could live a different life. Her greatest hope was that they would grow up in peace, never knowing the truth of their vampiric lineage. The blonde and dark-haired brothers looked back, their faces a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. The blue-haired boy angrily rejected her reasoning, shouting that they couldn't ignore the childhood they lost at that orphanage. A blue-haired boy questioned the woman with glasses, demanding to know when all of this had happened. She explained that as they fought against the first vampire, they decided to protect the ancient power, In a flash of golden light, she revealed that they had sealed the ancient power within the boys. As a figure was engulfed by the light, she continued to explain that they were then transported to the distant future. A crying baby appeared in the brilliant light as she concluded that they had all been turned into infants. A montage showed an elderly figure collecting the babies from a 19th century orphanage and bringing them to Vanfield. The woman with glasses explained that the boys must have realized by now that they had stopped aging. A dark-haired boy's golden eyes snapped wide open. As he listened intently, she stood before the group, revealing that this was their original form and they would not age any further. A red-haired boy questioned her story, wondering why the first vampire hadn't found them for centuries. She explained that the vampire couldn't sense them because the ancient power within them was sealed. However, she added with a grave expression that power had recently begun to unseal. A boy with a cross earring reacted in shock, asking if it was 17 years ago. He realized that, in a flashback, a little girl recalled her parents telling her something important. She remembered them saying that before she was born, vampires were thought to be nothing more than myths from fiction. She looked confused, admitting she didn't know what had caused things to change. The boy with the cross earring, sweating, muttered to himself as he tried to connect the pieces. If that was the case, he asked the woman what exactly happened 17 years ago. He pressed on, wanting to know why their powers would have started to unseal at that specific time. The woman's expression became intensely focused as the scene cut to a moonlit window. Her explanation began with a single word, because she began looking down at him with a melancholic and hesitant expression as he realized it was related to unsealing all the power she had created. He repeated his question more urgently. What happened 17 years ago, and why did their powers unseal? He understood that a girl was reincarnated as a human 17 years ago, unsealing all the power she had created. The group was confused, and the blue-haired boy asked what she meant by the princess. A silver-haired boy shouted angrily, refusing to believe what he called nonsense about a princess and reincarnation. The woman insisted they believe her, warning that Her Highness the Princess was in danger and they were running out of time. A blond boy demanded to know who and where this princess was. The woman's expression was grave as she prepared to reveal the princess's location. She revealed the princess was at their school, saying she could feel the fluctuations of energy across the campus. The blond boy was stunned by the news that the princess was at their school. The boy with the cross earring was speechless, wondering if this could be real. With firm resolve, she revealed that she was the one who first discovered the princess's fluctuations. The boy with the cross earring suddenly realized with a shock. A vision of a serene girl appeared, with text explaining that her energy fluctuations were also growing stronger. The woman warned that an enemy named Darden must have sensed it too, and as the fluctuations intensified, it would be easier for him to pinpoint her exact location. To the boy's horror, the woman turned to the silver-haired boy, addressing him as Jaka, and pointed out that he must have felt it too. Jaka looked alarmed, asking if the princess was who he suspected. She explained that if they had met Her Highness, they would have recognized her instantly. A memory flashed by of the boy with the cross earring and a girl meeting under a glowing archway. The girl's eyes widened as if seeing something profound for the first time. The boy's golden eyes reflected the same intense, shimmering light. The woman revealed their true mission to the stunned group. They were born to defend Her Highness the Princess. He looked up, finally understanding that their sealed powers had awakened on the very day the princess was reincarnated. An evil figure manifested as she warned that Darden's fluctuations were also strengthening as he rediscovered his powers. An image of Darden sinisterly embracing a woman appeared as she revealed his ultimate mission was to take the princess. The blue-haired boy recoiled in fear, realizing Darden wanted the essence of power that belonged to her. Helly, his face stained with blood, glared, demanding to know the enemy's identity and why he was targeting Suha. Darden, his purple eyes flashing, sneered, mocking their ignorance. Helly realized with dawning horror that the monster was Darden, and he needed all of them dead to achieve his goal. The woman with glasses explained to the gathered boys that they were the biggest obstacle in Darden's plan. A silver-haired, orange-eyed boy listened, his face a mask of shock. Jaka and Noah exchanged worried, sweating glances. A blond boy and a red-haired boy reacted with utter disbelief on their faces. When asked for his opinion, Heli somberly admitted he didn't know what to think. He confessed that while the story sounded completely absurd, there was more to consider. The woman agreed, stating her explanation answered many of the questions they'd always had. Jaka's eyes widened as he connected the dots, realizing the princess must be Suha. Heli confirmed their suspicion was Suha, while the silver-haired boy wondered if her old friend was Darden, which Heli considered very likely. Jaka dismissively challenged the woman, asking what her point was. He demanded to know what she expected them to do, even if her wild stories were true. She warned them that Darden was rapidly recovering his power and more vampires would soon follow him. She explained that the princess was unlikely to grow stronger, as she had already shared most of her power with them. This sacrifice was made before she sealed them and sent them to the future, a revelation that stunned the listening boys. She began to outline her plan for what came next. She announced her intention to take the princess away from the danger. Her plan was to move the princess to safety while the boys were to find and eliminate Darden. The blonde boy and Jaka erupted in protest, shocked at her intention to take Suha away. Confirming Suha's name, the woman calmly observed that they must have all met her already. The blonde boy blushed awkwardly, stammering that of course they had. She told them the reason they were so sure Suha was the princess was because their instincts drew them to her. She got straight to the point, asking for Suha's current location. The silver-haired boy erupted, refusing to let her take Suha and demanding to know why they should trust her. She asserted her authority, revealing she was Her Highness's most trusted mentor, the one who practically raised her. Noah, still unconvinced, questioned if she might have been sent by Darden. She scoffed at the idea, arguing that if that were the case, she could have just taken the princess by force instead of explaining all this. She warned with a pained expression that the world would become a miserable place if Darden got his hands on Her Highness. She firmly repeated her decision to take the princess. Heli watched her, a contemplative look on his face. He addressed her directly, stating that her story could be true or it could be false. His expression darkened as he declared they couldn't leave Suha's fate to a 50-50 chance. The other boys stood behind him in silent agreement. Heli's gaze sharpened as he posited that if his mission was to protect Suha from danger, then this woman trying to take her away was part of that danger herself. He issued a stern warning. She was not to go near Suha until she had proven herself. He grabbed his tie, his eyes burning with protective fury, vowing to make her pay if she threatened Suha. Releasing his tie, he announced with cold confidence that he was no longer the little kid she used to know. Heli stood his ground, repeating that if his duty was to protect Suha, then this woman was also part of the danger. He reiterated his warning, clutching his tie and promising to make her pay for any threat she posed to Suha. The woman listened to his ultimatum, her expression tense and unreadable. The scene transitions to the Academy's grand clock tower, bathed in the soft light of dusk. Suha stood nervously in a hallway, her eyes wide. She and Heli greeted each other in the quietly flickering hallway. Heli blushed, admitting he had been waiting for her so they could walk to class together. Pleasantly surprised, Suha readily accepted his offer. As they walked together, Suha blushed at their close proximity. As they walked, Suha thought to herself that for some reason, things felt different between them now. In a flashback, Suha recalled an intimate moment with Heli, a memory that still made her blush. Ever since that night, she felt unusually awkward and flustered whenever she was alone with him. Worried she was being too sensitive, she nervously glanced at a smiling Heli. He caught her gaze, and his confident look made her heart skip a beat. Heli called her name, startling the already flustered Suha, who stammered a reply. He casually asked about her plans after class, and she nervously admitted she was free. With a charming smile, he invited her to come with the team as they prepared for their game. Forgetting her nervousness, Suha eagerly accepted the invitation, her face lighting up. He confirmed the game was starting soon and gently asked if she would come cheer for them. She agreed enthusiastically, but stopped short as a shocking thought struck her. She abruptly remembered that Khan had asked her the same thing. Heli, unaware of her internal conflict, looked at her affectionately and vowed to do his best just for her. His sincere promise left Suha speechless and blushing, barely able to stammer out a thank you. She panicked internally, torn between two good friends and unsure of who to support. Ding-dong, the school's clock tower chimed. The signal marked the end of the day. Students pushed and laughed, flooding into the busy, brightly lit hallways. Suha, lost in the crowd, felt hopeless, having spent the entire class agonizing over her dilemma. Just as she was struggling with which team to support, a voice saying "Excuse me" pulled her from her thoughts. She turned in surprise, looking around to see who had called her. Helly suddenly appeared beside her, startling her by cheerfully calling her name. He reminded her that she had promised to come to the game, adding that he wanted to walk over with her. She mentioned she thought someone else had been talking to her just now, but Helly feigned ignorance, asking who it was. He looked around, claimed to see no one, and gently urged her to come with him. As Helly led her away, a suspicious figure in a trench coat watched them from the background. The mysterious onlooker adjusted their glasses, their expression anxious and worried. Helly glanced back, shooting a cold, threatening look toward the hidden observer. A flash went off, and the scene switched in the bright, disorienting flash of a camera. Whoa! The massive nightball stadium was packed with a roaring crowd, electric with anticipation. The determined Desolace team, clad in blue and white uniforms, stepped onto the field. In stark contrast, the Sunshine City team entered in orange uniforms, radiating confidence. In the stands, a nervous Suha took in the immense scale of the stadium and the cheering crowd. She stood alone among the roaring fans, her face etched with worry and hesitation. Khan, with a hint of a cocky smile, condescendingly congratulated the Desolace team for making it to the finals. A silver-haired opponent questioned their chances, smugly mentioning the rumors about their brother's return. A Sunshine City player scoffed angrily, declaring they could handle the Desolace team easily. Another Desolace player grinned, thanking them in advance for the easy win. A blonde player spotted Suha in the stands, excitedly waving and calling her name. He pointed to the fan section, showing her where she could sit to support them. With a bright, cheerful expression, he invited her to cheer for them in their designated area. Suha, feeling torn, shifted awkwardly, her hesitation obvious. Across the field, Khan silently watched the Desolace players' interaction with Suha. His gaze locked on his Suha, a determined blush on his face as he watched her. He silently vowed to himself that this victory would be for Suha. His thoughts drifted to three absent figures: Mayhan, Ruslin, and Camille. He desperately wished they were here, recalling their unfulfilled promise to return. He felt a pang of worry, wondering why he hadn't heard from them in so long. Pushing his concerns aside for the moment, he could only hope they were all safe. The referee brought the whistle to his lips, his voice echoing, "Ready." The game was about to begin. The two teams lined up for battle, facing off on opposite ends of the glowing center line. On the Desolace line, two players exchanged a tense, focused look before the whistle. The nightball match began, with two werewolf players standing ready, their expressions hardened with concentration. In the brightly lit stadium, a podium stood before the roaring crowd. A player's foot dug into the turf, ready for action. Pew! The game ball shot from the podium in a brilliant flash of light. A player became a blur as they streaked across the grass. The game was on as two players leaped high into the air, vying for the descending ball. Whoa! The massive, futuristic nightball stadium was electric with the crowd's energy. The vampire team, clad in blue and white armor, stood ready with serious expressions. The werewolf team took their positions, one player grimly ordering them to get ready. A player leaped high with explosive power. The ball rocketed through the sky, leaving a trail of light against the stadium backdrop. A silver-haired vampire intercepted the ball, much to his opponent's surprise. A werewolf player gritted his teeth in frustration, sweat trickling down his cheek. The silver-haired vampire smirked victoriously, confident in his team's advantage. Bam! He threw the ball with incredible force, sending it flying across the field. Whoosh! Another vampire with spiky silver hair charged forward at high speed. The werewolves watched in shock, caught off guard by the vampire's speed. Two werewolves leaped to intercept the vampire player, but he deftly dodged them. The spiky-haired vampire shouted, "Gino," preparing to pass. A red-haired teammate caught the pass, confirming he was ready. Thud! He was immediately tackled by a light blonde werewolf. Whoosh! The blonde vampire, Gino, ran into an open space and called for the ball. Bam! Gino caught the pass, shouting triumphantly that he had it. Bam! He was instantly sent flying by a much larger werewolf player, stopping his advance. Gino winced in pain, letting out a sharp grunt from the force of the impact. Khan glared with fierce determination, refusing to let the other team score. In the stands, Suha cried out for shine and worry. Dong. Khan deftly scooped up the drop ball as his teammates cheered for him. Khan immediately looked for an open player, calling out for Enzi. Whoosh! He threw a powerful pass, shouting for Tohel to catch it. Bam! The pass slammed hard onto the ground, intercepted. Thwack! The vampire captain, a dark-haired boy, blocked the pass with his chest. Whoosh! The werewolf, Tohel, cursed in frustration as he charged down the field. The vampire captain, with incredible spinning force, threw the ball. Tohel watched with a look of despair as the ball flew past him. The vampire's golden eyes glinted with an intense, focused light. Bam! An unseen player caught the ball with force. Wham! The vampire captain kicked the ball, scoring a point for his team. Swirl! A golden halo erupted from the goalpost, signaling the score. Tweet! The referee blew the whistle, confirming the point. Ding! The scoreboard flipped to 1-0, putting Desolace in the lead as the crowd roared. A green-eyed vampire excitedly congratulated his teammate Heli on the brilliant play. Suha watched from the stands, her cheeks flushed as she whispered Heli's name. Several of Heli's teammates waved to the stands, calling his name to get his attention. Heli looked up at the crowd with a gentle, slightly shy smile. His gaze locked onto Suha, and his smile grew warmer. Suha was speechless and blushing, completely caught off guard by his gaze. On the field, Khan watched the interaction angrily before steeling himself, vowing to even the score. Whoosh! The ball was launched again, and the game resumed with renewed intensity. A purple-haired vampire confidently caught the ball, shouting that he had it. Leap! A player soared into the air with incredible power. Bam! A werewolf player tackled an opponent, taking the ball and apologizing for the rough move. Stomp! A player planted his feet, shouting for his teammate to shoot. A werewolf player charged down the field, yelling that he was open. Swish! To his shock, a vampire player zipped past him in an instant. Slide! The vampire evaded his pursuer with a sharp, powerful slide. Ugh! The werewolf skidded to a halt, gritting his teeth in frustration. Leap! The silver-haired vampire player leaped into the air with fierce determination. Bam! He used Khan's back as a springboard, shocking another werewolf teammate. Thud! The vampire player was slammed to the ground, crying out in pain from the hard landing. A teammate cheered, "Nice one, Khan," as Khan flashed a triumphant, confident smile. Whoosh! Khan charged toward the goal with two vampires in pursuit. He spun quickly with the ball, shaking off the approaching defenders. Thump! Khan planted his feet hard, preparing for a powerful jump. He leaped high over two reaching vampires, completely breaking through their defense. Khan bared his teeth, aiming for the goal with pure determination. Bam! He scored, and the goalpost erupted in a brilliant shockwave of golden light. As a referee's whistle blew, Khan celebrated, shouting that they had tied the game. Whoa! The scoreboard flipped to 1-1, showing Desolace and Sunshine City were now tied. His teammates celebrated enthusiastically, high-fiving him for the amazing play. Heli watched the celebration in frustration, shouting shoot in annoyance. Tweet! The referee blew the whistle, signaling for the game to restart. Boom! The ball was shot high into the air with explosive force. Players from both teams jockeyed for position, shouting for a pass. Thud! A werewolf player collided violently with a vampire as they went for the ball. Bam! The werewolf players fought fiercely for control. Neither side gave an inch. In the stands, Suha watched worriedly, realizing this was the final round. She noted the game seemed different than before, more violent, and hoped no one would get hurt. A cloaked figure approached her from behind, asking if they could talk for a minute. A voice said politely, "Excuse me." Suha turned in surprise from the noisy crowd, answering with a questioning, "Yes?" The cloaked figure stood before her, repeating the request to talk. Confused, Suha pointed to herself and asked me. As the person waited silently, she nervously asked who the stranger was. The mysterious person's face was shadowed under their hood, revealing blonde hair and glasses. Suha wondered who this person was, trying to decline by saying her friends were in the middle of a game. The cloaked person insisted she meet them at the exit after the half. stressing that it was important. Turning, the person began to walk away before Suha could ask what it was about. She called out, "Excuse me," but the person disappeared into the crowd. Suha was left alone, bewildered, wondering what on earth the mysterious person wanted to tell her. Whoa. Late in the game, the score was locked in a tense 9-9 stalemate. Whoosh. The purple-haired vampire charged forward with intense focus. Grip. He held the night ball tightly, preparing his final shot. Swish. He zipped past two werewolf defenders. Bam. He slammed the ball into the goal for a brilliant, decisive point. Tweet. The referee's whistle confirmed the goal, and the crowd roared with excitement. A teammate congratulated the exhausted, panting Noah on a job well done. Two werewolf players gasped for air, one of them asking if the first half was finally over. A player stared at the scoreboard, which now read 850. He gritted his teeth, frustrated that despite keeping the score close, they still couldn't pull ahead. A player in pads clenched his jaw, determined to keep scoring in the two remaining quarters. Suha watched anxiously from the stands, noting that the first half of the game was over. She remembered being asked to meet someone at the exit, wondering what it could be about. As she debated whether to go, she reminded herself she didn't even know who the person was. A voice called her name, and Suha turned in surprise. Cheyenne, in a sportswear, excitedly asked if she saw him score just now. Suha praised his performance from the stands, which delighted him. Noah appeared behind Cheyenne, dryly reminding him he only scored 1 point. Cheyenne retorted that Noah scored 2, but didn't need to brag, making Noah blush. Suha watched them bicker from the stands as the two boys continued to argue below. Gino joined them, cheerfully greeting Suha and vowing to score 100 goals in the second half. He smiled warmly, inviting her to their designated fan section to cheer for them. Suha wore a flustered expression, overwhelmed by all the attention. Another voice called her name, and she saw Khan standing behind his teammates. Blushing slightly, Khan asked what she was doing at the game. Suha blushed deeply, remembering her earlier intimate moment with him. Khan admitted they were losing the first half, but assured her they would win the game. He declared he would win for her and asked her to cheer for him, leaving Suha stunned. Cheyenne objected angrily, questioning why a Desolace student would cheer for Sunshine City, but Khan ignored him. Khan pointed to his team's fan section, inviting Suha to sit there, which angered Cheyenne even more. Suha felt pulled in every direction as all the boys called her name, each one wanting her support. A new voice whispered from behind, asking if she was enjoying the game. Eek! Suha yelped as Heli suddenly grabbed her from behind. His gaze was intense. She asked him frantically if he was allowed to be in the stands while the game was still on. Heli smiled gently, agreeing he should get back to the field soon. Whisper. He leaned in close, saying he had something important to say, and suggested they talk somewhere else. He began to lead her away to ask his question. Whisper. He leaned in again, asking if she could cheer for his team. To her surprise, Suha was shocked he came all this way just for that, but he laughed, saying his time was up. Turning to wave goodbye, Heli leaped back onto the field as she called his name. Heli adjusted his helmet with a confident smile, ready to resume the game, as Suha watched him go. Suha watched with a faint blush, whispering his name. She suddenly panicked, realizing she had forgotten to meet the woman and worried if she was still waiting. Her expression turned serious as she remembered the woman saying it was important. Suha looked at the academy's banner, contemplating if she should go find her now. The referee blew the whistle, signaling the start of the second half. Boom! Cannons fired, officially kicking off the remainder of the game. Bam! The game resumed with Jaka violently colliding with an opposing player. Whoosh! Jaka passed fiercely, shouting for Heli to catch it. Thump! Heli caught the ball securely with intense focus, his golden eyes flashing with determination. Bam! Khan intercepts with a powerful tackle, knocking Healy off balance. O'Connor winces in pain from the force of the impact. Whoosh! An opposing player picks up the loose ball and breaks away. Healy watches the opponent escape, his eyes hardening with determination. Whoosh! Healy immediately chases the ball carrier at full speed, quickly closing the distance between them. Closing in, he catches up, approaching the player from behind to attempt a tackle. With a look of grim resolve, Healy prepares to steal the ball. Bam! He executes a perfect tackle, winning back possession for his team. Khan grinds his teeth, letting out a frustrated cry. Whoosh! An opposing player cleanly catches the glowing ball. Bam! He throws the ball with immense force. Spinning. The ball spins through the air, shimmering with golden energy. Khan watches as the play unfolds. Loud cheers, Thud. The ball hits its target, knocking a player to the ground. Referee Fujita blows the whistle, signaling the end of the point. The scoreboard shows the score tied at 10-10 at the end of the second set. Nice one, Khan. His teammates cheer, pumping their fists in celebration. Huff, huff. Khan pants heavily, sweat dripping from his face. On the other side of the field, Healy is also gasping for air, clearly drained by the intense match. In the stands, Suha anxiously wonders if the woman is still waiting for her. In a quiet corner, the woman waits patiently, her face partially obscured by a hood. Suha's heart is torn over whether to go meet her. The game resumes to the roar of the crowd. On the glowing field, whoosh, Healy dashes forward with incredible speed. Tangle. Healy and Khan engage in a fierce struggle for the ball. Jaka grunts with effort amidst the intense scuffle. Stagger, impact. A powerful collision sends players tumbling to the ground. Whoosh. With extreme focus, Healy prepares his next move. Bam! He unleashes a powerful shot toward the goal. The scoreboard updates, putting Desolace in the lead 11-10. Whoosh! Khan, sporting a new gash on his cheek, speeds across the field. Flash! Healy appears as a blur to intercept him. Stomp! Khan stomps heavily on the ground, abruptly changing direction to evade Healy. Bam! He returns a powerful shot of his own. Khan gasps for air, a satisfied smirk on his face at his performance. Beep! The whistle blows for the end of the third set, with the score now tied 11-11. Flash! The game continues as Healy moves with blinding speed. Bam! He slams into Khan, who grunts in pain. Impact! The force sends Khan flying backward, crashing onto the field. Healy braces himself, gritting his teeth against the strain. At the end of the point, Desolace leads with a score of 15-14. Dives. Khan leaps forward desperately for a crucial play. Bam! He strikes the ball, sending a powerful shot toward the goal. The crowd roars as the scoreboard now shows a 15-15 tie. Bam! Another deafening shot echoes across the field. Spinning. The glowing ball soars through the air. A player gasps, his stamina pushed to its absolute limit. Healy is bent over, struggling to catch his breath. As the game wears on, Khan is in the same state, panting heavily in the relentless rhythm. With only 9 minutes left in the fourth set, the score is deadlocked at 20-20. Are you okay? A concerned voice asks. Healy, his white-haired teammate, notes he's scored several points in a row. His red-haired teammate worries that Healy is pushing himself too hard. Healy dismisses their concerns, saying the game is almost over anyway. One of Khan's teammates also asks worriedly if he's alright. Khan glares ahead with a look of sheer determination, declaring that he can't let Desolace win again this year. He flushes with resolve, announcing that this victory will be for Suha. Beep! The referee blows the whistle, signaling the final moments of the game. Whoosh! A Desolace player rushes forward with intense focus. An opponent from Sunshine City matches his pace, racing with equal determination. Leap! The two rivals jump into the air, vying for the ball in a climactic showdown. A close-up shows a hand making contact with a weather nightball. Bam! The Desolace player successfully catches the ball, absorbing the impact. He lands steadily on the field, securing possession. Flash! His eyes glow as he instantly pivots for his next move. His expression is cold and determined as he moves. Whoosh! The Sunshine City player grits his teeth, shouting shoot, as he gives chase. Dash! He becomes a blur, rapidly closing the distance. He knows time is running out, realizing this is their last chance to score. The Desolace player, determined to make a stop, vows not to let his opponent score. Huff, huff. He breathes heavily, but his eyes remain locked on his rival. Sweat streams down his face under the immense pressure, his focus intensifying. Wow! He sprints across the field to the thunderous cheers of the crowd. In a quiet hallway, Suha confronts a cloaked figure, reminding them they had something to say. Eager to get back to the game, she resolves to make it quick and asks what they want. The cloaked person thanks her for meeting. This study investigated whether the brain processes music and language in the same way. Researchers found that musical training enhances the brain's ability to process both music and language, suggesting a shared neural mechanism. Gurgle. Suddenly, several threatening figures with glowing red eyes emerge from the shadows behind them. The cloaked person is seized, their glasses knocked askew in shock. Suha lets out a terrified scream in the face of the sudden, horrifying attack. Reaching out, a massive, clawed hand reaches for her. Back in the stands, the crowd is cheering, but Suha's seat is conspicuously empty. On the field, the Desolace player looks up, confused. He wonders where she is, frantically scanning the crowd and calling out for Suha in his mind. As he's distracted searching for her, an opponent closes in. Suha struggles against her captors, her cries muffled by a hand over her mouth. Dives. The Sunshine City player lunges forward, tackling the distracted opponent. Struggle. Suha kicks and thrashes desperately, trying to break free as she's dragged away. Slide. The two players hit the field floor, sliding from the momentum of the tackle. The Sunshine City player looms over his opponent with fierce determination, pinning him down. Huff, huff. He pants, wrenching the ball from his rival's grasp. Whoosh. He immediately pivots and dashes away with the ball. Whoosh. A teammate rushes to the fallen player's side, asking if Healy is okay. Leap. Healy springs to his feet, his face filled with panic, shouting for Suha. Low angle. In a dark corner, Suha's terrified eyes are visible as a hand smothers her screams. Healy freezes in the middle of the field, crying out in denial as the horrible truth dawns on him. Suha is forcibly dragged out of the stadium gates. Into the darkness, Healy can only stare at her empty seat as the roar of the crowd fades into the distance. His face is a mask of horror and sweat as the brutal reality of her disappearance hits him. The game continues in a blur around the motionless Healy. Flash. Khan takes advantage of the chaos, speeding across the field. Whoosh. Two of Healy's teammates rush forward to try and block Khan. Khan's resolve hardens as he declares he can't lose again and will win no matter what. Leap. He jumps to the final shot. He effortlessly twists around the two defenders in his path. Bam. He scores, the ball hitting the goal with a powerful and decisive spin. Huff, huff. Khan pants heavily, a wide, triumphant smile spreading across his face. Tick. The final scoreboard shows Sunshine City winning 21-20. Beep. The final whistle blows, ending the intense match. The scoreboard flashes the final result. Sunshine City has defeated Desolace by a single point, 21-20. The referee officially signals the end of the game as the victorious Sunshine City fans erupt in celebration. Khan is mobbed by his ecstatic teammates, who cheer their victory and praise his performance. In stark contrast, Jaka stands alone on the field, panting with exhaustion as his rivals celebrate their win. In the wake of the devastating loss, Jaka scowls, his face a mixture of sweat and frustration. Ugh. Nearby, Healy is also bent over, utterly exhausted and defeated. The entire Desolace team is crushed, gasping for air and reeling from the narrow defeat. As Healy listens to the cheers of his opponents, a single tear escapes his eye, his heart sinking with failure. Standing on the field, Healy looks up toward the stands, calling out for Suha under his breath. He stares in confusion at the Desolace fan section, where Suha's designated seat is now conspicuously empty. His expression shifts from disappointment to sheer panic as he screams Suha's name aloud. Hearing the shout, Khan stops celebrating with his teammates. Khan looks across the field in confusion, wondering why Healy is yelling for Suha. His face suddenly pales as a terrible thought crosses his mind. Healy, having completely forgotten the game, sprints desperately off the field as his teammates shout after him, wondering where he's going. Others in the stands shout out as well, calling for Suha and Healy. Whoosh. Healy runs, recalling she was there during the second half and finding her sudden disappearance suspicious. He panics, thinking it makes no sense for her to leave before the end. He wonders what happened. No, a horrifying possibility begins to form in his mind. He remembers the stern woman from his earlier confrontation, who declared she had to take the princess. Did Marge take Suha? The question races through his mind as Healy runs back onto the field. Healy's teammates also notice Suha's absence from the stands. They stare at the same empty seat Healy saw, their confusion growing. What? They exclaim in alarm, realizing her seat is now empty. A teammate alerts the others that Suha is gone, sending a ripple of shock through the group. Healy shouts for Jaka, his voice filled with urgency. Startled, Jaka turns his attention to Healy. Healy desperately pleads with Jaka to use his ability to locate Suha immediately. Though surprised, Jaka tells him to wait and prepares to concentrate. Jaka closes his eyes, activating his sensory powers to search for Suha's presence. He snaps his eyes open, his expression filled with shock and disbelief. As his teammates anxiously gather around him asking what's wrong, Jaka stammers that it's impossible. He reports with a look of panic that her wavelength, her presence, has completely vanished. What? Healy cries out in horror at the news. The other players are equally stunned, asking how he could have possibly lost her signal. Jaka struggles to explain, clearly terrified by his discovery. He confirms he can't sense her at all, even when pushing his abilities to their limit. With a grim expression, Jaka states that there are only two possible explanations. He reveals the grim truth. Either Suha is unconscious, or she is no longer among the living. His teammates stare back at him, their faces etched with absolute terror. Healy freezes, gasping as he tries to process the horrifying possibilities. The scene cuts to a cold, tiled floor, ominously splattered with blood. Healy, his eyes wide with fear, whispers Suha's name. He then lets out a desperate, anguished scream, crying her name to the sky. Healy rushes out of the stadium to find Suha, with Khan's team following close behind. Khan catches up, frantically asking if they found Suha. The blood-stained floor answers his question. Khan stares at the scene, his expression shifting from concern to cold fury. He rallies his teammates, shouting that they have to find her immediately, convinced it was the work of those monsters. Khan's purple-haired teammate anxiously asks how they're supposed to know where Suha went. A teammate with glasses chimes in, suggesting there might be a way to find her. He explains that their brothers have been hunting vampires and may have already found their hideout. He proposes finding their brothers first, certain it's their best lead. Whoosh! Healy's teammates and Jaka arrive, urgently asking if he's found Suha. Turn. Healy whips around, telling Jaka that the culprit is Marge, and they have to find her. Huff, huff. Jaka reveals he already tried, but he can't sense Marge's wavelength either. Another teammate panics, wondering what they're supposed to do now. Jaka calls out to Healy, who is staring grimly into the distance. Jaka makes a decision. They're all going to Vanfield House, their childhood home. As the group stands before the grand, ivy-covered manor, one of them mutters in disbelief that they're back. The red-haired teammate adds nervously that this time, they've returned willingly. Looking at the overgrown, dilapidated structure, another comments that's a complete ruin now. A teammate observes the cobweb-covered windows, remarking that it's not surprising since they escaped almost a century ago. With resolve, the group heads toward the entrance of the abandoned manor. Creak. The interior hallway is dark, dusty, and filled with cobwebs, confirming its long abandonment. Creak. A blonde teammate pushes open a door, revealing their old bedroom, surprisingly well preserved. He stares at the room in surprise, admitting it feels strange to be back. Jaka notes that while Spartan, the room is almost untouched, and another agrees it seems no one has used it. The red-haired teammate nervously wonders if this means Marge was telling the truth. A blue-haired teammate follows that thought, questioning if the orphanage was really built just for them. Healy remains silent, his expression tense as he observes the scene. Finding no clues, Jaka announces they should check Marge's office next. They approach the large, cracked double doors of the director's office. Creak. The doors swing open, revealing a lavish and well-maintained office, in stark contrast to the rest of the house. Turn. The team enters the room, one noting that it looks lived in, suggesting Marge was living at Vanfield. Jaka examines the bookshelves, realizing she stayed here even after they left. A teammate spots Marge's luggage, confirming she had been living in the office. Another teammate turns to Healy, speculating that Marge didn't take Suha. A purple-haired teammate explains that if Marge had left with Suha, she would have taken her luggage. The red-haired teammate theorizes that Marge's plan was to bring Suha here to hide her somewhere safe. He concludes that something must have gone wrong with her plan. Jaka realizes that since both Suha's and Marge's wavelengths are undetectable, there's a grim possibility. Clench. The blue-haired teammate clenches his jaw in anger, concluding who is responsible. The silver-haired teammate confirms their fears, guessing they are both hostages of Darden's men. The blonde teammate is horrified, finally understanding that everything Marge warned them about was true. Healy seethes in silent rage, filled with regret. In a flashback, Marge explains that Darden is after the princess, and she must take Suha to safety. Healy recalls his own words, coldly dismissing Marge's help and calling her another danger. He is struck with guilt, questioning if his choice is what puts Suha in danger. Overwhelmed, he cries out internally that it was supposed to be him, to protect her. Realization. Suddenly, Jaka's eyes fly open as he senses a presence. He looks around in shock, startled by the unexpected arrival. Jaka alerts the others that someone is coming, and they all turn toward the door in alarm. Creak. The large double doors to the office begin to swing open slowly. Creak. The doors continue to open, revealing the pitch-black hallway behind them. Healy and his brothers stare tensely, bracing for what's about to emerge. Shatter. A figure violently smashes through the glass panel on the door. The team recoils from the sudden intrusion. Thud. A heavy piece of the shattered door crashes to the floor. Gurgle. Monstrous figures with glowing red eyes and sharp fangs emerge from the darkness, snarling. Healy and a green-eyed companion recoil in shock, with Healy wondering if these monsters were waiting for them. Roar. The snarling monsters surge forward in a chaotic and aggressive charge. Roar. One of the creatures lunges, its clawed hand outstretched to attack. Bam! A hand slams into the monster's face, stopping it dead in its tracks. Thump! Healy lands a heavy blow, creating a brilliant flash of light in the dark hallway. Flames! A red-haired ally joins the fight, his hands igniting with fiery energy. Whoosh! An unseen fist connects with a monster's jaw. Bam! The green-eyed brother sends a monster flying with a powerful roundhouse kick. The defeated monster crashes heavily onto the hard floor. He urgently warns Healy that they're not alone in the house. The long, eerie hallway is revealed to be packed with more red-eyed monsters. Healy reacts with dawning horror, realizing the monsters aren't just after them. What? Choke. One of the creatures cries out in pain as it's caught in a chokehold. Snarl. Healy furiously interrogates the monster, demanding to know what it wants. The monster struggles, refusing to answer, saying it cannot speak. Healy's expression darkens with suspicion as a terrible thought occurs to him. His mind flashes back to the orphanage, questioning why a woman named Marge never left. He recalls how she remained in the eerie house even after he and his brothers had escaped. Sweat drips down his face as he considers a horrifying possibility about her fate. He realizes she might have wanted to leave, but couldn't. A large travel trunk seals the grim thought. Back in reality, Healy shouts at Noah, Jaka, and Cheyenne, telling them to run to the library. As his brothers watch in alarm, Healy concludes the monsters are looking for something inside Vanfield House. With burning determination, Healy screams that he will never let the monsters take it. The scene shifts to Suha, resting with her eyes closed, her face peaceful. A blonde-haired man leans over the unconscious Suha. He calls her name softly, gently cupping her face and whispering for her to wait just a little longer. He promises his men will be with him soon with a book. The scene shows a ransacked room, littered with piles of discarded books. In the darkness, a red-eyed creature holds up an ancient book that emits a faint glow. The man leans closer to Suha, telling her the book will make them one. A wide shot reveals him watching over Suha, who lies on a stone altar, her name echoing in the void. Bang! Bang! Back at the house, a monster is startled by a loud, urgent banging on a door. Bam! Healy lands a decisive blow, knocking another monster aside. Whoosh! They burst into a room that has been completely ransacked. Everything inside has been destroyed. Bam! Oof! The green-eyed brother unleashes a glowing green strike against another foe. Close up, a purple-haired brother appears, his expression cold and menacing. Yeah. He unleashes a devastating wave of dark energy, tearing through the surrounding monsters. Bust open. He shoves a door open violently, shouting at the monsters inside. His green-eyed brother follows close behind, angrily demanding to know what they're doing there. Whoosh! They burst into a room that has been completely ransacked. Everything inside has been destroyed. Flutter. At the broken window, tattered curtains flutter, revealing an empty, desolate view outside. Damn it! The green-eyed brother shouts in frustration, realizing they're too late. Roar! Another monster ambushes Healy, grabbing him by the throat. Clench! Healy glares at it with pure rage, demanding to know what the creature is looking for. He slams the monster against a wall, furiously asking what its accomplices stole from the library. Gurgle! A blonde-haired brother steps in, calmly telling Healy to let him handle the interrogation. Ugh! Gurgle! The captured monster grits its teeth, sweat pouring down its face as it struggles to resist. Flash! The blonde brother's eyes begin to glow intensely as he focuses on his target. You! Arg. The captured monster snarls in pain as he angrily demands to know why it's here. The blonde brother's eyes flash with power as he leans in and commands it to answer. The monster's eyes widen in fear, reflecting the hypnotic gaze of its interrogator. As the power takes hold, the monster breaks under the pressure, stammering that they were instructed to take a book. Healy reacts with confusion, wondering what kind of book the creatures could possibly be after. His brothers press for more details, demanding to know the exact nature of the book. The monster, struggling to form words under the mental control, mentions blood. It finally chokes out the full name of its target, the Altar of Blood. The creature confirms its mission was to find a book detailing the secrets of the Altar of Blood. The name alarms Healy, who is shocked by the ominous title. The blonde brother glares, demanding to know what the Altar of Blood is. The terrified monster cries out that it knows nothing more, insisting it was only following orders. It can only repeat that its sole instruction was to retrieve the book on the Altar of Blood. Healy's brother changes his line of questioning, fiercely demanding to know the book's destination. The monster reveals the location, a bar called Railgun in a city named Printing Ear. The blue-haired brother notes with concern that Printing Ear is quite far from here. The blonde brother immediately connects the mission to Suha, desperately asking where she is. The monster cries out in fear, insisting it knows nothing more and pleading that it only did as it was told. Cough. Suddenly, the creature begins to choke violently, its eyes becoming bloodshot and twitching. Healy stares in shock at the monster's sudden, gruesome state. Limp. The monster goes limp in his arms, leaving Healy stunned, demanding to know what just happened. Looking at its lifeless face, he wonders in horror if the creature is dead and why it died so suddenly. Elsewhere, a man with ice blue eyes glares ahead, having seemingly executed the monster remotely. Ugh, that idiot. He mutters in frustration, regretting not killing the subordinate sooner. He laments in a grand, unfamiliar location that the enemy now knows too much, finding it annoying. Growl, bark. Back in his lair, caged monster hounds snarl and bark viciously. Rattle. In another cell, a scarred person with glasses struggles weakly, addressing someone as Your Highness. The man listens coldly as the prisoner weakly mentions, "Our princess." The prisoner rattles the cage frantically, shouting for Darden to release the princess immediately. They desperately remind Darden of past warnings, questioning why he is pursuing a forbidden goal. Darden is completely unmoved, his expression cold and dismissive of their pleas. Sneer. Darden mockingly recalls hearing the same warnings back in the ancient kingdom. He flaunts his newfound power, boasting that he has now surpassed everyone. He approaches the cage, declaring that his power proves he was right and that he is a new beginning. Bathed in an ethereal glow, he announces his goal to create a new race that surpasses all others. With a crazed smile and glowing purple eyes, he demands a new title, Progenitor Vampire. The prisoner scoffs, refusing and calling him by his old name, Darden. The prisoner glares, pointing out that despite his boasts, his power is still incomplete. Darden calmly acknowledges this, admitting they know his weakness better than anyone. You're right, Darden agrees with a sly smile, implying he already has a solution. The frame shows Suha lying unconscious below as he explains that this is why he must perfect himself. Gurgle. The monster hounds let out a menacing growl from their cells, witnessing Darden's cruel power. Rude. Darden coldly tells the prisoner, Marge, that the princess could have been at peace. He leans in to taunt her, saying none of this would have happened if she had just cooperated. He turns and walks away with resolve, vowing to prove that he is, and always has been, right. In the vast, prison-like hallway, he stands over Suha's body, ready to enact the final stage of his plan. The scene shifts to the city of Printing Ear, its streets illuminated by night lights. The camera focuses on a quiet street, settling on the exterior of a bar named Railgun. A close-up confirms the destination, with Railgun written clearly on the wooden sign. Stumble. Outside the bar, the red-haired ally stumbles, clearly exhausted and struggling to stay on his feet. A scarred, red-haired man cursed the filthy vampires, panting with exhaustion and rage, wondering why they kept kidnapping his kind and what sinister purpose they had. Clutching his side, he resolved to deliver this crucial intelligence to his brothers immediately. As his thoughts cleared, the identity of the victims became apparent, and he questioned why the vampires were abducting his fellow werewolves. The scene shifts to the moonlit Sunshine City School, a modern seaside campus. The camera zooms in, highlighting the glowing sign that marks the entrance to Sunshine City School. Panting inside the school, the red-haired man stumbles through the hallways, exhausted from his earlier ordeal. He reaches a dorm room where 4 of his brothers are gathered, their expressions grim. Healy clenches his jaw, his heart filled with worry as he whispers Suha's name. He blames himself for being too caught up in the game to protect the person who mattered most. Drowning in guilt, he declares himself the worst werewolf and the worst person for failing in his duty. With firm resolve, he silently begs Suha to hold on a little longer. He solemnly vows to rescue her, no matter the cost. The brother with glasses speculates that the other brothers tracking the vampires might have found something. However, he notes with concern that they haven't been in contact, leaving them unsure of where to even begin their search. Just then, the red-haired man bursts through the door, shouting to get his brother's attention. 2 of them cry out, recognizing him as Mayhan with a mix of shock and relief. The brothers rush to his side, telling Mayhan how worried they were and desperate to know what happened. The group is horrified when Mayhan reveals that their allies, Camille and Rustlin, have been captured. Mayhan begins to explain, recounting how they acted on a tip about vampires and infiltrated a bar in Printineer called Railgun. He reveals the bar was a hideout. As the scene flashes back to him, Camille and Rustlin surrounded by vampires in a brutal fight at a moment when they mistakenly believed they had the upper hand. Teeth gritting, he grits his teeth, recalling the terrifying moment the tables turned. A powerful, cloaked vampire appeared in the doorway, looking down on their defeated bodies. He describes the new foe's sinister red eyes and a chilling smile, noting he was far stronger than any enemy they had faced before. The powerful vampire then released a black, fog-like gas that quickly filled the bar. Mayhan finishes his story, explaining that the mysterious gas knocked them all unconscious. His brothers listen, their faces etched with horror, stunned by the brutal turn of events. Heavy breathing, Mayhan frowns, recalling the moment he began to wake up, growling. He remembers being dragged into a storage room filled with cages, the sound of growling filling his ears. Snarling, inside the cages, ferocious werewolves with glowing eyes snarled and clawed at the bars. He reveals the horrifying discovery. Dozens of their fellow werewolves were trapped in that room. Back in the present, Mayhan confirms their fears. The vampires are kidnapping werewolves and taking them somewhere. He explains that while he was lucky enough to escape, Camille and Rustlin were not. He concludes his report with the grim news that their 2 friends are missing. One of the brothers slams his fist down in anger, demanding to know why the vampires are targeting them. Mayhan lowers his head, admitting that while he can't be sure of their motives, he suspects the vampires are using the captured werewolves as test subjects. 2 of the brothers recoil in shock, demanding to know what he means by test subjects. Mayhan declares that their brethren are in grave danger, and they have only one option: to go back to Railgun. He looks at them with determination, announcing their mission is to go back and save everyone. The scene cuts to a large, bustling train station in the city. Screeching brakes. A train pulls into the station, its destination clearly displayed on an electronic board. Printineer. Clacking. The train's wheels grind against the tracks as it slows to a stop. Rumbling. On the train, a young man in a school uniform sits quietly, his eyes closed. He appears to be asleep, but his expression is troubled even in rest. In a dark vision, he stands alone in a void, calling out Suha's name in anguish. Turning, he looks around frantically, searching the darkness, asking where she is. His desperation grows as he screams her name into the oppressive emptiness. Flash. A sudden spotlight illuminates an ornate, glowing chalice on an altar, which he stares at in shock. Sprinting, in a frantic vision, Healy runs through an abyss, screaming Suha's name. Thud. His desperate sprint comes to an abrupt halt as his hand hits an invisible barrier. He recoils in shock and panic, realizing something is blocking his path. Pounding, he pounds frantically on the barrier, calling out to Suha, whose figure appears just beyond his reach. A giant hand reaches for him as he anxiously asks if Suha is hurt and where she is. The vision shows Suha lying still in a comatose state. Healy faintly hears her mention the altar of blood, and he shouts in frustration that he can't hear her. Confused by the weak connection, he mishears her, thinking she mentioned something about a sword. Suha's voice echoes in his mind, instructing him to take the sword from the temple. A single tear escapes her closed eye as she pleads for him to come to the altar of blood and save her. Whoosh! As encroaching darkness consumes his vision, Healy reaches for her desperately, tears of rage and despair in his eyes, screaming her name with all his might. Gusp! Ah! Healy jolts awake with a sharp gasp, the terrifying vision shattering. Panting, he finds himself back in reality, sitting in a classroom, panting heavily from the ordeal. He clutches his head, wondering if the hyper-realistic experience was just a dream. A gentle voice calls out to Healy, getting his attention. A white-haired brother looks over with concern, revealing he also just had a dream about Suha. Noah confirms with a horrified expression that he experienced the exact same thing. Jaka chimes in, his eyes wide with terror, saying he dreamt it too. Another white-haired brother explains that he also dreamt of Suha, adding that she was in a strange place. The purple-haired brother agrees, describing the place as dark, like a cave. The blue-haired brother clenches his jaw, recalling that she was lying down. He continues, explaining that she was on an altar, before grimly announcing that their next stop is pretty near.